It's not the accomplishments that matter. It's not the resume that matters. It's the whole life resume that matters.
John, what do you think of the saying, we all have one true passion?
I would say that saying is incomplete. A more complete expression would be, we all have at least one true passion. In just thinking about my life, my understanding of my controlling idea, my one true passion, has changed over time. And broadly speaking, I would say my passion set equally inhabits writing and teaching. So my one true passion is comprised of two true passions. I think one true passion limits the conversation.
And did you grow up with the idea that there was just one, quote, true sort of thing that you knew you should devote your life to? Or is this something that you'd been exposed to early on?
You know, it's funny, since we met last, among other things, I did a thought experiment. I wrote a memoir called John Vorhaus Year by Year. And the challenge of it was to describe every year of my life to no more than one paragraph. The first years are easy. 1955, don't remember. 1956, don't remember. 1957, vague memories of cheese. But at a certain point, I start to get into my teen years, for instance, and look at who I was and what I felt at the time. And one thing that struck me as I reflected was I had this sense that I wanted to be big in the world. I didn't really know what that meant, but I just knew that I desired that thing. I didn't even articulate it around, oh, I want to be an actor or a writer or an artist or anything, just known, I think. And that idea, then as I reflected on my 20s, I realized that that teen idea was kind of a burden to me, because there I was in my 20s being not known and feeling like I was letting down an earlier version of myself, a 13, 14-year-old version of myself. Looking back on all of this, I reflect and I realize neither of those versions of myself had the self-understanding that I have. And the 13-year-old didn't have the self-understanding that the 20 or 25-year-old had. So whatever expectations we had when we were younger, they're built on a platform of imperfect understanding of the self and imperfect understanding of the world. So they must naturally undergo change as we undergo growth. I just made up a word.
Yeah,
as
I like
we undergrow.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's good. Did you know why you wanted to be known?
Another self-truth that was revealed through this exercise was when I was that age, elementary school, middle school, high school, two things were always true. One was arguably true, if not absolutely true. I was always the smartest kid in the class, if not the smartest among the smartest. And there's no arrogance on my part to say so. They labeled us at the time. You guys go into the super smart class. The other thing that was inarguably true, I was always the shortest kid in the class. And so being the smartest and the shortest endowed me with a feeling I later came to identify as arrogant insecurity. And so I think this desire to be known in the world was a desire to have my status propped up and validated by as many people as possible. I would say that's where the desire to be big in the world came from. As I started flexing my creative muscles, though, I came to understand what I really want to do is communicate ideas. And I had this as early as, let's say, 25. At the age of 25, I stopped working as an advertising copywriter and started being a singer-songwriter, singing and playing guitar like Bob Dylan. And I made that choice because I understood that if I wrote a song and then played it to an audience, I was creating an information bridge. I was taking ideas in my head, encoding those ideas into song lyrics and music, transmitting them by singing and playing them. And they would be received by other people who would then decode that information or those lyrics and that music into information in their brain. So from the age of young adulthood at least, and possibly much earlier than that, I was always interested in the idea of getting my ideas out of my head and into your head and their head. And so one might say that if I succeeded in being big in the world, I would succeed in being impactful and doing a fulsome job of getting the ideas out of my brain and into your brain.
Okay. And did you have trouble with the paragraphs when you went through each year? Did you find yourself having to, shrink down the paragraph? It was too long?
I didn't have to do anything except end the paragraph because this wasn't really a project for publication. And one of the things that I was working on and conscious of was there are no good paragraphs or bad paragraphs. There's no good or bad part of my story. There's only the part of the story that I choose to signify the events of that year. So if I was having trouble honing content, boiling down content, that just meant that I hadn't finished editing it to my satisfaction. But there was never any sense of, oh, it should be longer or shorter or better or worse or different. I just let the material be what it was. I have pretty full historical record to draw upon. My mother, God love her, saved all of my report cards and a ton of my letters home. So for the early years, up to my mid-20s or so, I have my mother's historical record because all of that paperwork came to me eventually. So I could reflect on and review my past just by going back to the sources. From my mid-20s, I had journals to draw upon, and then from the mid-1990s, I had hard drives to draw upon. So it wasn't really hard to access information about the past. It was hard to identify what part of the life experience of any given year was a meaningful inflection point to the point that I would want to put my focus on that discussion at that time. There was a lot of personal pull from me to credential myself. Like I wanted to, this is the year I wrote for Married with Children, and this is the year that I wrote for Charles in Charge, as if there was some imaginary reader to whom it would matter a great deal about when I stroked the major accomplishments of my life. But as someone who has lived through the major accomplishments of my life, I'm now much more at home with the idea of it's not the accomplishments that matter, it's not the resume that matters, it's the whole life resume that matters. And the difference is the resume is the jobs you hold, but the whole life resume is the things that you do that you look back on in reflection and say, those were the things that made my life worth living. Those were the things that I can identify as high points or turning points or inflection points in my life.
I feel like all of us could benefit from this, looking at our life by each year and writing a paragraph. Have you suggested this to other people in your classes?
I have. I now include it as extra credit homework in classes. One might say I don't ever look at the outcomes, but I do encourage people to do it. Corollary, in all of my classes, I always tell people between now and tomorrow, do something you've never done before. So although my classes are mostly writing classes, I am also thinking about how to make the experience more transcendent for the people who are in it. To your question, if I had it to do over again, I would have loved to take this on in my 20s and build it throughout my entire life. And for young people watching, for you kids at home, try it. Start doing a summary, a year by year of anything you've done up to this point, and then plan on adding to it year over year. If nothing else, it will be a robust record of the life you've lived. And one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is you like to have those records because you can't necessarily trust the old memory. A pitfall that one will encounter is expectation. I'm writing my memoir that seems to carry a lot of weight. People will think things like, I haven't lived enough life to be worthy of a memoir. I haven't done enough important things to be worthy of a memoir. I won't write well enough to do justice to my story. And all of these things can be addressed with the controlling idea, whatever you write, it can't be more than a paragraph. And since you know it can't be more than a paragraph, you don't put that burden of expectation on it. That's the thing that I would remember. In a situation like this, there are no good outcomes or no bad outcomes. There's just outcomes. It's just a thought experiment that you can have with yourself to deepen your understanding of yourself and your relationship with yourself, which is the job of everybody in the long run.
Sure. One final thing to add, though, have you had people then write paragraphs about a certain year and it uncovered things they didn't want to remember?
I can certainly imagine that happening. I had that experience myself. I'm going to answer that question quite obliquely. I told you that I do this exercise, do something you've never done before. And people all over the world treat that differently. In one particular instance, a woman had a challenging conversation with her ex-husband for the first time. And when she reported on the engagement, she said it was not easy and not 100% good, but worthwhile. So I would say that anybody who sits down to confront themselves honestly will discover things about themselves that they might not feel immediately comfortable with. Rather than freak out and take it out on the person who suggested the exercise, I would propose a different strategy, which is to understand that that moment of uncovering a truth and having a strong emotional reaction to it, that's an opportunity to work on one's awareness and acceptance, in the simple sense that I am aware that I've written something that revealed something to be about myself that I'm finding challenging. And then acceptance, whatever the thing is that I just discovered, I can accept it as a part of myself, if for no other reason than it has just been revealed to me to be a part of myself. I don't have to assign a value judgment to it. I don't have to say that's a good or a bad part of myself. It's just a revealed truth. So that will allow someone to allow themselves to make discoveries in these little paragraphs, and then have a way of accepting the, let's call it, the negative aspects of those discoveries.
Yeah, I could see where it could uncover things that you maybe don't want to remember, but yeah.
It's worth. I don't have a bad past.
Oh,
I don't have trauma in my past. So a lot of my approach to this exercise, I kind of feel like I'm playing with the house's money. I'm operating in a space where I feel very comfortable, that is, inside myself. But I recognize that other people's life experiences are different, and especially a lot of people have had trauma that I can't even imagine. And so I would say that this exercise is worthwhile, but for some people, probably not without risk, and so it should be treated with respect.
What is purpose?
Purpose, according to my understanding, is the stuff that makes life worth living. The things that one does, that one looks at and says, in doing that, I feel in harmony with myself. In doing that, I feel like I'm doing what I should be doing. Or looking back on it in the past, I can say that was an action that made my life rise or my life have meaning. It's a little slippery because anything can be purpose. Examples range from parenthood. One might say, my purpose is to have children, pass on my genetic information and philosophy and beliefs to the next generation. That's a legitimate aspect of purpose. Someone else might say, my purpose is to be as outrageous as possible and make people question the way they live their lives. Completely valid purpose. My purpose, me, John Vorhaus, my purpose is to instruct. And when I'm in situations where I'm communicating information that I think will be of benefit to the people I'm sharing that information with, that's when I feel as though I am fulfilling my purpose. For people who are asking the question themselves, hey, what is my purpose? I would simply ask you, what is it when you're doing it, it feels right? That's a good place to look for your purpose. And if you don't know what your purpose is, looking for your purpose becomes your purpose. So if you say to yourself, I don't have a purpose, I don't know what my purpose is, that immediately puts you on a quest to discover what makes you feel fulfilled. And until you discover that thing, the thing that will make you feel fulfilled is the drive to discover what will make you feel fulfilled. The learning itself becomes the purpose.
Do you find that people feel guilty for trying to discover their purpose, that it seems self-indulgent, maybe culturally, whatever, they've been conditioned that you never think outside of these certain jobs and this certain lifestyle, and so if you think of anything different, now you're shameful?
There's a lot to unpack there. Perhaps we can throw another P into the conversation, and that P would be programming. A lot of us are endowed with programming benign or malign programming from our parents, our community, our society. And a lot of what we are challenged by as thinking human beings is, how do I accommodate my programming? How do I transcend it if it needs transcending? How do I accept it if it needs accepting? And then how do I deal with conflict that exists when the programming that's been handed to me is no longer in harmony with the programming that I choose to apply to myself? If I can break this down to an example, I grew up in 1960s California, suburban America. And the programming that was imprinted upon me by my parents and society was, there is an educational path that will take me through university, probably graduate school, into a profession like law. Maybe professor at a university, but it was understood that my path would be along those lines. No question, no discussion of purpose. It was understood that the purpose was to build a sustainable lifestyle, make money, one might say. In my 20s, as I started to transform and started to take agency over myself and my choices, I said to myself, that program doesn't really work for me. That's not what I want to do. So therefore, it's incumbent upon me to figure out what I do want to do. And at this point, I evolved the first of my main purposes, which was to communicate through writing, to be a writer. Once I had that, it served as counter-programming to the be a lawyer programming or the be a college professor programming. Took me on a different path. I reconciled those paths. So the challenge that you speak of about not feeling guilty is really the challenge of reconciling old information and new information and making sure that the person I am now is making choices based on what I want as the person I am now at the expense of other options or choices. A lot of those other options or choices will present to us as guilt. We'll hear ourselves say things like, I should be working at my job, but I want to go paint. And that's a fundamental conflict that we struggle with as we strive to align our lives around what we want them to be rather than what we've been instructed that they are meant to be.
How can you live a life having 7, 8, whatever, different purposes? Don't they conflict with one another?
Here's where the appearance of conflict will arise. If I'm, let's say, being a creator of any kind, a painter, artist, actor, whatnot, the part of me will be afraid, and the part that's afraid will leave things undone. Because if you never finish something, then you never have to retroactively reflect on whether you did a good job or not. And if you're afraid to self-judge, it's often easier not to finish than to finish and then reflect and say, well, that was not my best effort. So a lot of people will go off in a lot of different directions, not necessarily aware that they are secretly serving insecurity, and they're using distraction, diffusion of energy in order to keep from confronting fear. Once fear has been confronted, that act of going off in a lot of different directions is not a diffusion of energy, it's a multiplication of energy. Because the thoughtful, fearless creator will do things like, I've never written an opera before. I'm certain if I do it, it'll be terrible, but I'm going to learn 10 things I didn't know before. I'm not afraid to commit to create a bad opera. I'm past that. So let's give it a try. Let's go into a new form of creative expression, harvest what learning there is to be gained, and bring it into other parts of creative practice. So, in answer to your question, in the presence of fear, diffusion of energy is a real risk. In the absence of fear, extension of energy is a real benefit. I want to say that again because I sort of stumbled on it. In the presence of fear, diffusion of energy is a real risk. It can keep you from getting anything finished for well and good. In the absence of fear, extension of energy is a great good because wherever you put your energy, you will gain information that you can then turn and apply to other parts of your creative practice.
And forgive me, did you say you did some kind of like street performing, or you were a busker or something like that?
Yes,
Mime?
it was a mime.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did people react to you? Yes. How did people react to you? Were they interested, and how did you feel with their reactions?
Look at that clown. I mean, I was being a clown. Their reaction was generally positive. One of my many mottos, I have so many, but this is one of them. This I believe above all other things, a man shall find goodness if goodness he brings. So I was bringing goodness as a performer. I wasn't trying to give anybody a bad time. I was trying to entertain people. So I'm wearing my virtue and my generosity of spirit in such a way that people can respond in kind. I didn't get into fights. I didn't get into conflict. Every now and then somebody's like, oh, mimes, I hate mimes. Okay, that's fine. I don't much care for mimes myself. I got to stop being a mime and start being a ventriloquist, something else where I can talk. But from an ego point of view, from a pure ego point of view, it was easy and fun. It was not challenging work. Being in front of people as an entertainer behind whiteface, not a challenge at all. I'm completely protected. I'm protected by my mask. Any entertainer can be considered self-protected if they consider part of their projection to be a mask. Give you an example. When I was a singer-songwriter, I hid behind the mask of, I don't do this very well. It was a way of self-protecting against the fact that, in fact, I didn't do it very well. But I protected my ego in a space where I felt insecure by taking responsibility for the lack of level of expertise at the outset. Did that roundabout to an answer to the question?
It did. Because, you talked about having, these different desires, different creative outlets, and then being afraid of doing them badly, so not finishing. But when you're sort of a street performer, you're up on stage, there's no hiding. I know, but you said that you are somewhat hiding behind a mask, but you're still sort of, for lack of a better term, naked in front of the world.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at something like stand-up comedy, which I had a little early experience with and then a little later experience with. A lot of the stand-up comedy experience is pretty hellish because if you're doing it right, you are completely naked. Not literally naked, but psychologically exposed. And if you're not willing to be super vulnerable, your act is not going to get where you want it to. You can tell jokes, you can write jokes and tell jokes, but they'll be at such an emotional remove from who you really are that you won't do it well. The other thing you need in stand-up comedy is just a lot of repetition, a lot of trying and failing and building up a critical mass of experience. Then once you have that critical mass of experience, the audience can no longer hurt you because you've already been through the experience of bombing, dying on stage, and you understand that that's a natural part of the process. But when you consider yourself to be brand new in it, just going up to an open mic for the first time, you'll naturally be completely vulnerable, scared to death, fearful of a bad outcome. You probably will get a bad outcome, but you'll also get such a profound high, an exhilaration, that you'll want to do it again right away. That's the buzz of creativity.
And I don't know if you said this in our last interview with you or you said it in another one, that if you already feel like you're not maybe the best at something, then people can't really hurt you because you've already put yourself down. Mm-hmm. You've already said, I know I'm this and that and this and that, so what else can you throw at me?
If you cop to imposter syndrome, you can't be accused of being an imposter.
That's true.
And even at this moment here, I have a very, very strong desire to reach out to you watching this video and change your life forever. But where do I get the arrogance to say, I know something you need to know? I don't have that authority. It's not built into me. I have gifts that are endowed upon me. I got a good brain. I have the leisure to use it. I know how to use it. I have the desire to use it. So there's a lot that I can take credit for. I can't take credit for having an exclusive understanding of the way the world works. Nobody can. All I can take credit for is being humble in the desire to know myself, and humble in my desire to know the world, and humble in my desire to share my discoveries with other people. By the time I'm done laying out all that humility, You can't hurt me. I'm already down on the floor. I'm just this little guy trying to share a few things I've picked up along the way. That's a safe place to operate from.
What is path?
What is path? Well, let's see. We determine purpose is the stuff that will make you feel like your life is worth living. So path is the strategy and tactics you use to achieve that goal. If I say to myself, my purpose is to start a, I want to make this up, see if I can get this right. I'm going to start a Central African tech incubator to incubate technology enterprises for small and medium businesses in the Congo, let's say. Let's say that that's my purpose. If I can go to that place and achieve those goals, then I will feel like I have achieved my purpose. That's what I want to do. What's my path to get there? Maybe I need to go to university and study finance. Maybe I need to work in investment banking or private equity. Maybe I need to go to business school and get a graduate business degree. Maybe I need to work for venture capital investors who are impact investors as well. That is to say, they're trying to use their money to create social change. Now, once I stand on my platform of education and experience, I can go to the Congo and start making the investments that I want to make. The steps that get me from the origination of my desire to the complete execution of that intention, those steps are the path. To put this in context, I need to make it clear that when I was young, I was super arrogant, just really arrogant. One of the things that I was arrogant about was I have self-awareness. I know myself, and other people don't. And in my mind, I imagine there are two kinds of people in the world, and this is where the arrogance comes in. It's like there's two kinds of people in the world. People who are on the path to self-knowledge and people who are in the swamp. And the really pejorative part was like, I just dismissed the entire population of the world. If they weren't on the path to self-awareness, their lives were nonsense. I have a lot more sympathy for people now than I did. But in this sense, the meaning of path is literally the path to spiritual enlightenment. So we can think of path as the steps one takes to achieve one's goal. That's a definition of path. We can also think of path as the journey toward greater self-understanding, greater understanding of the world, greater acceptance of all these things, greater love, greater humility, all the positive values that will make us feel safe and content when we fall asleep at night, knowing that we have a spiritual understanding that works for us. So there's the practical path toward goals, and there is the spiritual path toward self-understanding. Two definitions of path for the price of one.
Well, thank you. I'm wondering, though, how did you know someone wasn't on the path?
Because they wanted to spend time with me, and I didn't want to spend time with them. What I understood at the time was, if you're on the path, you really have something to offer other people. You have awareness, you have enlightenment, you have insight, you have energy. You're a person who knows who they are and is going about the business of actualizing themselves. There's a lot of positive qualities to that. Many people are attracted to those positive qualities, including people who do not have them, who say, I see that bundle of energy, that bundle of purpose. I want to grab hold of that. I want to ride along and possibly tax it or drag it down. So my understanding was people in the swamp want to be with people on the path because it's better for them, but it's not better for people on the path. If you want to be with someone who's on the path, you must yourself be on the path. There is no choice. So, what was the question?
Well, because you said you would get upset if you didn't want to be around people that weren't on the proverbial path.
Yeah.
How did you know they weren't?
Because they weren't demonstrating self-awareness. Yeah, it's easy enough. God, it was easy at the time. This is when I was single, and I used to meet people by asking them pointed questions to see what their answers would be.
Like what?
Like, what's the most important thing you know? Or what do you do that you love?
Okay.
Or what do you believe in?
Whew.
And just imagine that I'm asking you these
I
questions at a party.
Right.
I'm going to get one or two reactions from you. Either you're going to be interested and engaged and thoughtful and give me something I can deal with and learn from, or you're not going to understand what I'm saying and I'll know that we're not going to have a fruitful conversation or relationship.
Or a third, if I may.
Yeah?
I'm going to wonder what you want from me in the sense that is there an agenda to the questions? Whereas it sounds like the agenda was just you wanted to get to know someone. Were you simpatico? But maybe I would think, is he going to sell me a course? Is he going to sell me a counseling session? I don't know.
Well, let's start with the basics. What's the most important thing you know? I know you want to answer the question.
Yeah, and I am drawing a blank, so that obviously shows I'm not on the path. I think it depends on what arena. I think I can't just say this is the most important thing I know, because I think there's different arenas where I could say this is what I know in this arena, this in this one, and maybe some people might think that's a BS answer, but that's just kind of my truth.
Well, it might or might not be a BS answer, but we're going to drill down until it turns into something solid.
Okay.
Instead of saying what's the most important thing you know, when I asked what's the most important thing you know, for you, it created a block. And the block was, I don't know how to evaluate, I don't know how to decide or weight those things. So if I'm demonstrating other awareness and empathy, I'm going to say, I asked the question, I'm going to say to myself, I asked the question the wrong way, I'm going to ask it a different way. And now I will say, in a more inviting sense, what is an important thing you know?
Okay.
Now you don't have to pick number one, you can pick any.
Right.
And so I'll ask you that question. What is an important thing you know?
Okay, well, to quote, this is going to sound very cliche, but that intuition is more important than knowledge is probably one thing that I think I live by.
Okay. And it's interesting, it's almost like we come to forks in the road in this dialogue, because if I said to you, what's an important thing you know, and you still waffled, you still said, well, I still don't know what area you're talking about or what you want. If you weren't willing to plunge into an answer without fear of giving me the wrong answer, that would tell me something about you. This is something that I use when I'm evaluating the strength of writers. Do you have willingness to commit to a choice, whether it's a good choice or a bad choice, whether you know it's a good choice or a bad choice? Because if you're willing to commit to choices as a writer, that's something I can work with. But if you can't commit to any choice because you're too afraid of making a wrong choice, that's a hurdle we need to overcome. So now back to intuition. What I would probably do if I thought this conversation had some future value to it, I would try to drill a little deeper. I would say something like, tell me about a time when you see your intuition at work. And maybe you'd say, can you tell me about a time when you see your intuition at work?
Oh, many, many times. Without certain specifics, there have been times when the intuition saved my life to get out of a certain situation quickly. And it was best that I did. And maybe off camera we can go into some details, but sure. I'd rather not say them here. Other times, knowing that maybe the world was going to go in one direction, and maybe it wasn't favorable, and to hold on because it was probably going to be a rocky few years. Different things like that. Mm-hmm.
So when you place a value on trusting intuition, that is a value that has been established over time. You have used intuition and mapped it against outcomes. You have some experience with intuition now.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
This brings me to one of my favorite ways of thinking about past, present, and future. Take lessons from the past, interpret them in the present for use in the future. So if we're having this conversation at a party and I'm trying to deliver some value to you, I might say, in a quiet moment, think about those moments of intuition, when they struck you, how you were challenged to accept or reject acting on them, how you decided to act on those things. Just think about that stuff now and recognize that when you encounter situations in the future where your intuition will be called upon, not only will you have your history of intuition to draw upon and your native strength of intuition, you will also have the work you did reflecting on how you understand your intuition to work as a tool that you use. And will emerge, I would hope, from this conversation with a little bit more willingness to self-inspect without fear.
Oh, sure. And what I've learned is that, then this is a cliche saying, but that intuition whispers. It's not heavy-handed. So a lot of times it's easy to overlook it. And a lot of times, sometimes we don't want to look at our intuition, but it's a little gnawing whisper. And so I don't know if that adds to it, but.
Every time I have failed to acknowledge that whisper, I've gotten fired from a job. Three or four occasions can come to my mind right now. And what they had in common was everybody knew I was not happy in that job except me. And I knew it too, I just couldn't admit it. My voice was whispering, you don't belong in this environment, you should really leave. And instead of acting on that, I acted out against it and just became impossible. So they fired me, which was the right outcome, better for me in every respect, in all instances.
Sure. And sometimes we know a job is not good for us, but we have to stay because we need a paycheck. But what's your compass for knowing that you're on the right path?
What is my compass for knowing that I'm on the right path? I start by having a liberal definition of what the right path is. Let's boil it down to a simple thing. I'm making a piece of art, and I'm confronted with all kinds of choices. One set of those choices is the right path, but there's a lot of room on either side of that one set of choices that's also the right path. So a lot of being on the right path is just having acceptance that there's more than one right answer. As I'm fond of saying, the ocean is blue, but it's also wet. There's always more than one right answer. But if you're speaking more in terms of how do I, as a human being, know that I'm fulfilling my human purpose, I'm going to have to borrow a writing strategy for this. When I've written something, I want it to be good. And the way I make sure that I can trust that it's good is by being very hard-nosed about saying it's not yet good. That is to say, I'm a strong editor against my own work. I have a good, strong practice of saying, no, it's not good enough, you can do better. And the reason I have this practice is so that when the work arrives at a place that I'm happy with, and I say to myself, I don't think I can do any better, it's backed up by some authority and not just hope. Because many people in that situation will say, well, I hope this is the right path. I haven't tested it against other paths, so I really don't know. And I've never challenged myself to leave a wrong path, so I have no experience of that. Seems like if I want to make sure that I'm on the right path, I better find some ways to test the rightness of the path. And I've just named a couple of strategies. Look at other paths and either ask yourself, what would it be like to walk on those paths, or actually walk on those paths? And then the other thing is, if you're aware that you're not on the right path, simply have enough self-honesty and self-acceptance to say, this doesn't look like the right path. I better change paths. The first time you have the experience of leaving the wrong path and getting onto the right path, you will have a much better, you'll have faith in your ability to know the right path, because when you looked at a wrong path and saw that it wasn't the right path, you knew it wasn't the right path, so you left it. For myself, I was an advertising copywriter at a young age, wrong path. I bailed, I just left that path. I've done longer explorations into things like visual art, stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is a good one. It's not my path. I wish it were my path. I can't find a path there, which is not lamentable and possibly not uncorrectable, not insurmountable. But the path that I perceive myself as being on is a path to higher self-understanding through communication with others, and a path to communicating better to others with greater self-understanding.
What does practice mean to you?
Practice, to me, means taking steps to do better what I want to do well. Let's say that I wanted to have a practice of calligraphy. I would need to take a series of steps to improve my practice of calligraphy. Some of these steps involve collecting materials, acquiring materials. Some involve finding time or establishing time to work on my practice. Then the next part of the practice is engaging in the activity that is calligraphy, actually doing calligraphy. And at this point, I'm thinking of it as an experiment. I'm doing an act to look at an outcome. I'm not doing an act to get a good outcome. I'm doing an act to look at an outcome and learn from the outcome so that I can take that learning and reinvest it in the acts that I take. This thing that we call practice is taking a series of actions leading to outcomes then learning from those outcomes in order to create new actions, leading to new outcomes and leading to new learning. If one is on the path of investing in Central Africa, then the practice will involve some things that we've already found on the path. I'll need to learn how to get good at investing. Well, what steps can I take to practice being good at investing? I can make mock investments in products or services and see how they perform over time. I can have an imaginary investment portfolio, one might say. I can go to places where there's more information to be gained. I can go to a conference on double bottom line investing or social impact investing and gather information from people who know more than I do. Take all that information and push it back into my efforts to get better at the act that's at the core of my practice, which is evaluating and making investments. On the other hand, if I'm a songwriter, then my practice involves learning chords, putting them together, writing lyrics, refining them, putting them together in song combination, learning from other songwriters, learning from other acts of songwriting, doing a lot of songwriting on my own with no expectation that any of it's going to be any good, but with the expectation that all of it will make me better at doing this thing that I want to do well. The trap that one runs into when one is trying to establish a practice is to get out ahead of the practice and say, what matters to me is not the practice itself, but the end result of the practice. A home in the Hollywood Hills. That's not what practice is. Practice is I'm doing a thing that I love, and I'm putting time and energy and effort and fearlessness into it so that I can learn how to do it better, so that I can love it that much more. It has nothing to do with the outcome and everything to do with a series of actions one takes day to day.
So if we go back to the calligraphy example, that maybe you're already trying to book yourself out to do wedding invitations or something, and you're not really there yet.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Though I'm laughing at that because knowing me, I would probably say to myself, the best way for me personally to get good at calligraphy is to get a gig, is to book myself out to, maybe a friend of mine says, gosh, I just don't know what to do about wedding invitations. I say, I'll do them. I'll do them. Do you know calligraphy? Don't worry about it. Leave it to me. I'll take care of it.
Yeah, what's the guest list?
What's the guest list? Right. So then all I have to do is learn how to do calligraphy. I did this. This is a story I've told all my life. I was 25 years old, hustling for money. I was Santa Claus on stilts. Did I tell you this story last time? I think
you did, yeah.
I may have.
We loved it, yeah.
Well, skip to the takeaway. The guy asks you, do you know how to walk on stilts? Never tell him you don't know how to walk on stilts. Just ask him, when do you need me? I'll be there. And then figure out how to walk on stilts on your own.
Sure.
But let's lens back a little bit. Here's a guy who's clearly very adept at taking chances and not worrying too much about outcomes, not worrying about failing, being audacious, having chutzpah. These are qualities that I have baked into me, endowed upon me by my brain, my upbringing, my sense of self, my fearlessness. So just because they work for me doesn't mean they're going to work for everybody. And if you say to somebody, hey, book yourself a gig doing calligraphy, because then you'll be forced to learn how to do calligraphy, which is what you want to do, that might be more than they can handle, a little more bacon than the pan can handle. But if you throw down that gauntlet to a certain person, they're going to pick it up and say, that's what I've been waiting for. That's the strategy that works for me. So what we can take away from this is there's always a gap between desire and action. We desire to take more actions than we actually take. And our job as creative people or just people living life is to close the gap between desire and action, like act on more of our desires. There are many, many strategies that work on closing the gap between desire and action. Bluffing, as I just described it, saying you know how to do something that you don't know how to do, is a strategy that works very well for me. It's one I've used over and over again in my life. Might not work for you, but there will be strategies that do work for you. For instance, you might say to yourself, I really want to do calligraphy. And you understand I'm using calligraphy as a stand-in for anything. I really want to do calligraphy, but I'm afraid to do it badly. And because I'm afraid to do it badly, I never start. I know this about myself. I'm desperate to start, and I'm too afraid to start. That's the trap I'm in. How can I break this logjam? How can I get momentum toward my practice? You might say to yourself, my loved one's birthday is coming up in 6 months, and I'd really love to give that person a framed calligraphy saying happy birthday. And the thought of how much joy that person is going to get out of that calligraphy, that might be the motivation I need to get past the fear and into the practice. It's a different strategy. Different strategies work for different people.
Sure, and I think if your identity is tied to always doing something perfectly and well, I think you'll be afraid to try something. If you know, like, I mess up at a lot of stuff, might as well just try this, who cares?
Sure.
I think it's easier.
Sure. Perfectionism is the flip side of fear. We strive to be perfect because we fear to be less than perfect. But creative practice tells you there's no such thing as perfect. You can go, this drives me crazy, you can buy books printed by major publishers that have been written and edited and copy edited by dozens of people and still find typographical errors. There's no such thing as perfect. You can paint the Mona Lisa and accidentally scratch the surface of it on your way to the museum with it. There's no such thing as perfect.
Sure.
Nor is perfect the point. The point is a satisfying act of expression. Whether that act of expression is painting, music, investing, archaeology, sports, acting, human relationships, being good with your kids, any human activity you can think of can be thought of as a series of acts of expression. And all of those things taken together amount to a practice of that thing, a practice of parenthood, a practice of pickleball, a practice of ultimate frisbee, a practice of sewing. And all of these practices can be improved simply by saying outcomes don't matter, only practice matters.
Why do you say that the only thing that matters is practice?
In my vocabulary, there's something called a useful fiction. A useful fiction is a lie that we tell ourselves in order to help ourselves do things we want to do. It's a fiction that's known to be a fiction but deemed to be useful just the same. Telling myself only the practice matters is an example of useful fiction. Because I might have an idea in my head, what really matters is selling a painting for $10,000. But if I ever want to have a painting that's worth selling for $10,000, if I set out to paint a $10,000 painting, I'm certain to fail. Because I'll be too afraid of failing. I'll be too afraid of screwing up a $10,000 opportunity. If I say to myself, the only thing I have to do is continue to get good and keep getting better until I'm capable of creating works that are worth selling for $10,000, that's the only way I'm ever going to achieve that goal. So what this boils down to is when you say to yourself, only practice matters, what you're really saying is, in order to achieve my goals, in a sense, I need to distract myself from my goals. I need to ignore my goals for the time being. Because if I'm too focused on achieving my goals, the focus that I put on achieving my goals will be a roadblock, will actually keep me from achieving my goals. I'll give you an example. I'm writing a screenplay, and everything's going great. I'm totally grooving on the characters. I'm in my practice. I'm hitting those tab keys. I'm being funny. I'm being thoughtful. And it's going so well that the thought crosses my mind, this screenplay is going to win me an Academy Award. The minute I have that thought, I'm no longer on the page. I'm off the page, and I'm in the realm of my fantasy where I'm getting an Academy Award. And that might be a pretty picture, but it's not useful to me in the moment because I'm thinking about the outcome when I should be thinking about the practice. So this is why I say nothing matters but the practice, because in order to do the practice well, it's axiomatic. You need to be thinking about the practice. If you're not thinking about the practice, you're not going to execute anything at all. So if I find myself thinking about how wonderful it's going to be when I win an Academy Award, and I start thinking about the acceptance speech that I'm going to write, I'm taking myself off the page and I'm not moving the work forward in any sense to the point where it might achieve that goal. So I just say to myself, you're off the page, go back to the page. Words on the page, that's the only thing a writer can control, words on the page. When everything else is lost, words on the page will sustain us. And by extension, When everything else is lost, being in our practice will sustain us. While we're having this conversation, you know and I know that the California wildfires are not too far in the distant past, just last week or the week before. And I guarantee that there are people out there who lost their homes, whose first response is, I gotta get my hands on some watercolors. I have to get some paints. I gotta get a canvas. I need to make an act of creation. I need to do my art now because I'm in such crisis that only that will save me. That's a beautiful thing. That's refuge. If you are fearless enough to let your practice save you. The problem many people face, and this is where my heart goes out to them, they want to be in practice, but they are afraid. And because they're afraid, they're denying themselves the very reward that they seek, which is to fall into that deep pool of practice, whether it's artistic expression or writing or anything at all, to the point where they just really feel good about it, where they feel physiologically good. We went through this in the pandemic. Creative people needed to respond to the outrage of the pandemic with creative expression. I did, you did, we all did. So we know this to be true.
Now, is path similar to flow? You know, the book by Mikhail, and I've gotten his name wrong before, forgive me. But the book Flow, and it's about being present, so present in whatever you're doing that you forget about time, any problems, you're just in the process of it.
Yes, practice has that quality. I call it chasing the buzz, and that's just my word for the same thing. When you're in the flow, when you're in the moment, there's no past, there's no future, only now. My dad got it from golf. I get it from painting or from drawing, from visual creativity. I get it from writing. I get it from a lot of things. I get it from Ultimate Frisbee. You know it's there. You know you want it. It's neurochemical. It's endorphins released. The act of creation, this thing that we call flow or being in the zone or chasing the buzz, they're all the same. They're different definitions for the same thing, which is you are being neurochemically reacted for doing what you want to do. Sorry, you're being neurochemically rewarded for doing what you want to do. I could delve deep into this. I believe that humans are neurochemically rewarded for a whole series of behaviors because all of those behaviors are profoundly pro-survival. And when we're neurochemically rewarded for eating, for sleeping, for acts of creation, for taking risk, all of these things are pro-survival. They're good for us as individuals, they're good for the tribe, they're good for the species. As I like to say, if we weren't willing to take risks, we'd still be living in trees, wondering where our next banana was coming from. So we shouldn't be surprised when risk is neurochemically rewarded, or creativity is neurochemically rewarded. That's what keeps humanity moving forward.
And going back to when you were talking about writing the screenplay, and what was taking you out of your path was envisioning sort of the, getting this Emmy, whatever, walking into Dantana's, blonde on one arm, brunette on the other, tux, everybody's. Is it okay to indulge in those fantasies and then get them out of yourself?
I mean, anything's okay. With awareness and acceptance, everything is okay. I'm aware that I'm off the page, that's okay. Try to get back on the page, that'll be okay too. And also one can reward oneself. One can say, I'm going to shine for a minute. This is how I describe it. I've just written a joke and it's a funny joke and I might feel like I got to share that with a friend. I got to shine for a minute or just enjoy it for myself. That's healthy practice. The only thing that contributes to unhealthy practice is fear. And the only thing that contributes to healthy practice is fighting against fear. All of the other steps we might take will either serve or hinder those goals. And I think it's worth having a clear understanding of the difference between path and practice for our conversation. Practice is the way we move forward. Path is the steps along the road that we're moving forward upon, and purpose is the destination, why we're on this road. So we might say that path is the road, practice is the car, and Las Vegas is the destination, or whatever else is the destination. Sorry, purpose is the destination.
But we hear so many people say that ego. Well, I'm in my ego, whatever, and then this is all ego based. But what if somebody just kind of indulges in it for a while and then gets it out of their system? Because if you force, no, I refuse to be in my ego, and I'm going to be in this monk mode, and I'm pure in my intention. What if you just say, I'm going to just indulge my ego for a little bit and be like, all right, it's like a candy, and then I've had enough. Now I want to get back on my path.
I buy that completely. I have nothing to offer except to say that sometimes what looks like a virtuous path is really an ego-driven path.
Sure.
I'm thinking about, in these times, I'm thinking about first responders. They're not egomaniacs, but they are driven to serve. And by serving, they reward themselves psychologically. They reinforce their image as people who can and choose to save other people.
And risk their own lives, yeah.
I'm sorry?
And risk their own lives.
And risk their own lives. So in terms of doing things for the ego, I can imagine that if somebody goes up into a blazing fire and rescues somebody from a fire, and they end up feeling pretty good about it, they deserve to feel pretty good about it. It's not like they're doing it to make themselves feel good, but the consequence of doing it does make themselves feel good, and that may be why they define it as their purpose. My purpose is to save lives.
Right, and I don't want to say that first responders are so ego-driven. I know maybe some of them are driven also by the fact that they couldn't save someone in their lives growing up. And this at least that was something a therapist had told me a long time ago. I don't know if that's true. But if we take the analogy of the white knight, and I'm not saying that first responders are the white knight,
sure,
but the white knight in sort of medieval times of someone that comes in and more with I'm going to save the village. And it turns out maybe that they have dubious plans, but they look as if they're here to save the village. Sometimes we can fall into that category, but
we can't know what goes on in the mind of the white knight, but we can note the difference between dramatic characters and comic characters, and then we can think about how that reflects on our own life, if I may.
Sure.
Last year I was in London doing a workshop for Amazon, for their creative team, their European creative team. And the question on everybody's mind is, what's the difference between drama and comedy? And so I gave it some thought, and I arrived at this. Dramatic characters take actions toward goals. They act in their own self-interest. Comic characters take actions toward ego. They act in their own self-image. So to take the example of the white knight rides into town, wants to save the village. That's a dramatic character taking action toward dramatic goals. If that character wants to save the village so that everyone can tell him how wonderful he is, that's a comic character taking action toward ego goals. When we're evaluating the actions of other people or evaluating our own actions, we have to look past the action and ask ourselves, what is the motivation for this action? Am I serving my self-interest or am I serving my self-image? And if I'm serving my self-image, might I not want to make the choice to serve my self-interest instead? Let's think of a harsh example. Husband and wife, they're not getting along. And they have a capacity to trigger each other. I can say something that I know will be hurtful to you. And if I say it, it's going to make me feel better in a perverse way. But it's not doing anything for sleeping peacefully together at night. It's not doing anything for building our relationship and moving it forward. It's not serving any self-interest that I can see. It's only making me feel better. So I make the choice to take an action for the sake of feeling better. But by making that choice to feel better, I end up harming outcomes that I would wish not to harm. I might end up making things worse for myself, better for my ego, worse for my situation, let's say. We can call this entire class of engagements cartoon emotions. We can say there are things that we do simply to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. And we can honor those feelings, never have to judge them as negative, but we can also opt to have different strategies that lead to different outcomes. So in this case, I might say to myself, I know that if I let the next words come out of my mouth, I'm going to score a big point, make myself feel like a stud, but I'm also going to set this relationship back 10 days. I'm going to skip the pain of the 10 days. I'm going to find a different way to voice those feelings, or just not voice them at all, not repressing, just turning away from an opportunity to be hurtful. Because I know that making that choice will lead me more reliably toward the outcomes that I want to have in my life.
What if an artist feels shame for not loving the process of creating and they find the process extremely painful?
What if the artist feels shame for not enjoying the process or finding the process painful? Is that what you asked?
Right.
Huh. Well, I would say if the artist feels shame about anything, the first step would be stop feeling shame. Accept your process for what it is. Again, we get back to this idea of I should be doing better than I am. I'm doing exactly as well as I can. At this moment, I'm doing the best I can. Whether it's painting, drawing, educating myself, whatever it is, I may be doing it. I may not be doing it as well as I'd like to, but I'm certainly doing it as best I can. Otherwise, I would be doing it better. So the first thing I need to do is to accept my current level of performance. And then, strategically, ask myself, if there are pain points here, what can I do to minimize the pain points? Is there a different way for me to think about my art that will play more to my strengths and play away from my weaknesses? I'm thinking about myself in this moment. Tedious execution does not interest me. I'm not going to spend an hour doing cross-hatching with pen and ink because that act of creation doesn't turn me on. I have other things that I like to do that I enjoy more. I like drawing free-form human figures, for example. So now I can say to myself, I could get better at cross-hatching, which would be useful. That'll build my practice. And I can continue doing the type of art that I love just because I love it. But whatever path I choose in this moment, whichever action I choose in this moment, I'm not going to assign a value judgment to it. The act of feeling shame is the act of assigning a value judgment to an action. The specific action, that was a bad action, and I should feel ashamed of myself for taking that action. That whole line of thought is foreign to me. I don't like it, I don't allow it, I don't believe in it, I don't find it fruitful. I take bad actions, and my reaction is, that was a bad action. I'd like to amend my behavior around that action, do a better job next time. But how I feel about it emotionally, shame, I let that go. I must let it go. I can give you an example from less than 24 hours ago. I got a bad memory. And I was talking to a guy, and I got about halfway into the conversation, and I thought to myself, do I know him? I'm talking with him as if I don't know him. But it occurs to me at this moment, I know him quite well, and I've completely forgotten about him. Shame. Then acceptance. Your brain works in a certain way. It's not working quite as crafty as it was when you were young, but it's still the brain you got. And if you feel shame over how it performs, that's not going to help you, not in any way, shape, or form. If you feel acceptance on how it performs and build strategies to make it perform better, then that's okay. The part that's not okay is not having a bad memory. The part that's not okay is feeling bad about having a bad memory. Let's say this again. The part that's okay, the part that's not okay is not failing in practice. The part that's not okay is feeling bad about failing in practice. Yeah, because if you fail in practice and you don't feel bad about it, then you can stay in practice. If you fail in practice and you do feel bad about it, you can't stay in practice because you'll be afraid to. You'll be unhappy with it.
But sometimes shame, though, is needed so that we don't go and harm other people. And I'm not saying something is innocent as just forgetting that you knew someone in whatever context that happened. But shame is necessary in life, and feeling bad and realizing you could have wronged someone.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. That sounds good. We can agree to agree.
yeah, we agree to agree. Oh, I like that.
That's a rare thing today. Yeah. What would you say to any artist who feels like they're not making any progress in their life? I'll give you an example. Let's say a writer's been writing stories for 7+ years and they just can't get any traction.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine on this very subject. He, my age, has just completed a 350,000 word novel. Wow. I don't think he's ever going to get it published. He doesn't think he's ever going to get it published. But we agree that the act of having written it is profoundly more important than publishing it. Now, that will sound like the self-serving argument of an unpublished novelist. But the fact of the matter is, unpublished novelists outnumber published novelists thousands to one. You're much more likely to write a great novel than you are likely to have that novel achieve public acclaim. That's the math of it. And the math of it is different than it was 20 years ago. It's not getting better because there's so much content out there. It's hard to have a career, a livelihood as a writer in this day and age. But on the other hand, the fact that you can get your content out to so many people means you can find an audience. So first we have to ask ourselves, is there a difference in our definition of success between financial success and finding an audience? Some writers will say, I don't care about financial success, I just want to have an audience. Some writers will say, I don't care about financial success or an audience, I just want to achieve the goal of writing a novel. Some writers will say, I don't care if my writing is good or bad or indifferent, I just want to get paid. And all writers will find their own path in the capital P path sense of it, meaning they will find their way to the thing that makes them feel like they are fulfilling their purpose. And all writers will find their own small p path, that is to say, they'll find the strategy that works for them. When I first came to Hollywood, I taught a class on breaking into Hollywood. And one of the points I made was, everybody breaks into Hollywood a different way. It's like it's a space station with 10,000 docking ports, and you have to find the one docking port that fits your spaceship. For some people, it'll be being a writer's assistant. For others, it'll be writing fruitlessly for 10 years and then finally selling something. Everybody's got their own path. For writers who are struggling, the first thing I'm going to do is change that word struggling to striving, because struggle has a negative connotation to it. I perceive myself struggling, I'm unhappy, versus I perceive myself striving, I'm happy. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to change the vocabulary around it. I'm going to assess what I'm looking at. Based on what I've done so far, can I anticipate things changing, or is this the top of the market that I found for myself? And if it's the top of this market, is it time for me to find a different market, a different way of expressing myself? Do I have the creative tools to do that? Do I have the courage to do that? Am I prepared to surrender what I think is a lot of sunk cost surrounding that? By that I mean, I've spent 7 years trying to be a young adult novelist and it didn't work out. So now I'm going to be a children's book author. I think that's going to be more successful. It looks like I've squandered 7 years of effort. No, you've invested 7 years of practice, which will help you write children's books in ways you can't imagine until you're actually writing children's books. But, again, I have to remind myself, I stand on a mountain of privilege. And the current privilege that I enjoy is I can write and teach and create and not really need to make a lot of money out of it. That's a gift, and I'm aware that it's a gift. Perhaps it's a gift that I gave myself by living a certain sort of life up to this point in it. Hard work, and fiscal responsibility. But nevertheless, I understand I'm in a different position. Let's imagine that you are a first responder who wants to be a novelist. Okay? And your challenge is, first responding pays pretty well.
Sure.
Novels so far have paid nothing at all. I've written a bunch of them, you say. I put them up on Kindle. Maybe I independently published them. They didn't sell. I'm a failed novelist. I'm a failure. Maybe I should just stop dreaming, stop expressing myself, and focus on this other thing that I'm good at. That's a choice. People make that choice. But I would say, If you are drawn to acts of self-expression, if something inside you makes you want to be a writer, just telling yourself you don't care about it anymore isn't going to make it go away. The urge will still be there. It's genetic. It's part of who you are. So rather than change things by stopping making art, change things by changing how you relate to art. Change the goal from being a successful novelist to writing better today than I wrote yesterday, and taking pleasure and pride in advancing my craft day over day. In the ideal, in the Renaissance ideal, no painter or artist would ever have to worry about money because that's what patrons are for. In the world we live in, we often find ourselves in navigating the space between what will satisfy my artistic urges and what will sustain my creative practice. That is to say, what's going to earn me a paycheck. Thoughtful people make compromises and trade-offs and find some way to meet both of those needs. The strategy that I use for all of this is to divide my time literally into 3 parts. And these 3 parts are, let's see if I can remember this, easy: mind, body, spirit. The third of my life that I devote to my mind is the stuff that I do to get better at the stuff I want to do well, my practice, let's say. Body is everything I need to do to put food on the table and shelter overhead. This is my job. This is what I do to earn income. And spirit is the stuff that I do that makes my life rise, make me feel good about myself as a person. And this will include play and love and sports and spirituality and meditation, yoga, all of that stuff. So if we say to ourselves, I got 3 things to do: devote time to mind, devote time to body, devote time to spirit. Then I can look at anything I'm doing in the course of the day and ask myself, is this a mind task, body task, or spirit task? If it's one of those 3, then it's fine. If it's none of those 3, what is it? Maybe it's a self-indulgent habit. Maybe it's a distraction. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's demands of other people. There's a lot of kind of swamp out there beyond mind, body, and spirit. So perhaps what we can take away from this class is, as an exercise, chart your actions in the course of the day. At the end of the day, write a list of all the actions you took during the day and ask yourself, which of these contributed to my mind, which created to my body, which contributed to my mind, which contributed to my body, which contributed to my spirit. You might find that you went through the day and you had no creative practice at all. You didn't write, you didn't create any art. So there was mind activity lacking. You didn't do that part of your job, of your practice. Tomorrow you try and do a better job. But you look at the things that you did during the day, and it may be you ran to the grocery store, filled a tank of gas, watched some television. So I would say filling the gas tank and going to the grocery store, that's body stuff. Taking care of business, paying the bills, earning the money to pay the bills, that's body stuff. Watching television, I'm going to file that under spirit, relaxing, recharging the batteries, seeing how other people do it. I think there's room for that. But if all I did all day was sit on a couch playing video games, then my life is not in balance. I'm only indulging, I guess, spirit at the expense of mind and body.
I was hoping we could go back to one quick point, and that is, you talked about the person with the day job, whether it's a first responder, whether it's a lawyer, teacher, barista, and how they just want to do whatever they want to do with their creativity all day. There is something that you find after having a job and then being able to be home all day and do on it, is you do lose touch with the world. And you do those little mundane things like filling up the tank. You'd be surprised something could inspire you, that if you're not out there doing that, you lose a lot of that. And so I know it doesn't sound fun to people that want to just quit the day job with the boss breathing down their neck, but there are things that feed you when you're, quote, out in the world. They don't feed you when you're at home.
Boy, you're preaching to the choir right here. Here's how I've experienced this conflict in my life in just the last few days. I am very self-sufficient. If I had nothing but my computer and my solitude, I'd be fine. but I am not convinced that's helpful. And this recent fire that we've talked about has caused me to see my community in a different light. I know a dozen people who lost their homes in the fire. They're all of the same community, the physical sport community of Ultimate Frisbee. I'm of this community too. And to see the way the community has come together around the people who've lost their houses made me realize this community is much more important to me than I imagined it was. I thought I was really, how did I describe it? Community adjacent. I don't want to be community adjacent. I want to be part of community in a way that I didn't 2 weeks ago. This is new information to me because I recognize if I'm really self-sufficient, I'm likely to cut myself off from the world and not notice that I've done it. So I think your point is very well taken. We all need inspiration. Inspiration from the Greek, to breathe in, to inspire. We need new information to stoke our creative flames. This is why artists take sketchbooks to art museums and draw Monets and all those other A's so they can see how the pros did it, so they can be guided by and inspired by other practitioners of their same craft. This is why I, in my youth, would videotape a situation comedy and then play it back scene by scene and reverse engineer the story outline from the script so that I could get a better understanding of the relationship between story and script. To your point, if all you do is create, then your creation has a ceiling, because at a certain point it will become, what's the word I'm looking for? It'll just cycle back on itself. You're not getting any new information. I said this before, I love talking with you guys, among other things, because you really inspire me to deep dive into how all of this stuff works. And one thing I discovered at a very early age, as I understood it, was you can experience fully or you can communicate fully, but you can't do both. So I can be an artist alone in my loft, making art, losing myself in my art. Or I can be out there in the world, always with other people, never making art. So I can be experiencing fully or communicating fully. I think I need to find a middle ground. I need to find a way to move back and forth between experiencing and communicating, between generating content and taking in new information. So, simplest solution, the most elegant solution, if you're trapped inside your artistic experience, get yourself a dog. Because your dog's going to need to be walked 3 times a day. That'll get you out of the house 3 times a day. And I know, because that's why I have a dog.
John, we'd love to hear your process about how you write books. Can you talk about the writing process, how you start?
Sure. Here's how I start writing a book. I take myself by surprise. I wake up one day and start working on that book. I may have been thinking about it for a while. Today's the day I'm going to get into it. The next thing I do is drop all expectations. The book will be what the book is. My job right now is to get the words out on the page as quickly as possible. I go into writer mode and I stay out of editor mode, which means I'm going to write the whole entire book as it comes out of my brain and it comes out of my fingers, doing my best not to go back and try to fix all of the obvious mistakes I'm making along the way. I separate writing from editing. The first part of the job is to write the first draft. 100% writing, 0% editing. Once I've written that first draft, then I'll go back and start casting a critical eye on my choices. See if I'm satisfied with them, whether I want to make changes, and if I make changes, what other kinds of changes that will create. And I'll go through the entire manuscript again in, let's call it a hybrid, half writer, half editor. Because the editor is saying, when you wrote this, you knew it didn't work, and now you're looking at it and sure doesn't work, you're going to have to fix it, and now's the time. So then I put on my writer hat and fix the problem. Go through the whole draft again. Again, 0 expectations. I'm not trying to make it pretty. I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm just trying to do the best I can with the material at the stage of development that it's at and trying to move it down the line, trying to advance it from where it is to where I want it to be. At each stage of my development, I'm mindful of something called platform thinking, which says that every draft is merely a level of development that I stand on to reach the next level of development. This gives me the freedom to write that first draft blindly and without worrying about quality control, because that draft in particular, I know it's going to be a huge mess. I don't care if it's a huge mess. All it has to do is be enough of a mess that I can stand on it and reach the next level, which is to go back and start making it less of a mess. So my first draft, 100% writer, 0% editor. My second draft, and let's say second, third, and fourth drafts, some blend of writer and editor. Then my last draft, second to last draft, will be an editor pass. That is to say, I'll read it as if I were an editor. Does this make sense? Is it self-indulgence? This is the part of the process that I call squeezing out the stupid, which is I take out all the stuff that I left in there just because I love it, but doesn't really belong in the story. And this can reduce content quite a lot. I'm a ferocious editor. I work hard to make my books lean and clean and not self-indulgent. Note, not while I'm writing, but while I'm editing. While I'm writing, anything goes. And while I'm writing it, I'll write it, this is BS. I know this is BS. This is never going to make it into the final version. I know, but let's just see where it goes. It's going to reveal something interesting. Then the final pass I make is a copy editor pass. I'll proofread it and look at it from a proofreader's point of view. Being the person I am, I will also do the cover design, do the production, do the marketing, do the promotion. I'm a cottage industry. I do it all. For most writers, as they like to think about it, they think their job is done when the copy editing is done, when the manuscript is complete and you can't stand to do anything else with it. That's when another kind of work begins. And that's the work of, promoting it. Winston Churchill said, I won't get this quote right, but he said something, writing a book is an adventure. At first it is a plaything and a toy, and then it becomes a mistress, then it becomes a master, eventually it becomes a monster, and finally when you feel it must vanquish you, you kill the beast and fling it to the public. And that is Winston Churchill's very succinct understanding of writing a book. If I look at my process, I think it's kind of the same thing. I enter every book underestimating how much it's going to cost me in terms of time and hard work. So that's the plaything part. I fall in love with it. I get on a creative rush, and whoa, this is a crazy thrill ride I'm on. That's when it's a mistress. Then I hit story problems I can't solve, and I have to stay with those story problems till I solve them. That's when the thing is a master. Then it becomes, God, I've had this thing on my desktop. I can't remember when I worked on anything else. I'm dying for something new. Just labor through the editing, make it as good as you can, do the steps, do the copy editing. You get to go back to another plaything eventually, but right now your job as a professional is to do the professional parts of your job. And then ultimately just, kill the beast and fling it to the public. Hope somebody finds their way to it. If they do, great. If they don't, oh well. I have a friend who's a heart surgeon, and he says the only part of his job he likes is cutting people open. Everything else is just what he puts up with to do the part of the job he loves. And I can relate to that. He's seeing patients, he's doing office work, dealing with insurance. That's me with marketing. I hate marketing like a cat hates baths. I actually don't have to do it anymore because if the books find their audience, great. If they don't find their audience, it's not going to make that much of a difference to me in my life. But if I were a young writer, and when I was a young writer, I paid a lot of attention to marketing because how else are you going to grow your brand? Especially in this day and age when there's so many competing brands out there. You know what I do? I try to make marketing part of my practice. I try to find ways to make marketing itself a fun and creative exercise. I'll give you an example. When I was promoting the book of practice, I composed images to go with quotes from the book. And then I posted those with a link to the book. The images weren't in the book. They were new. It was my bait. Like I was saying to myself, well, if I have a half an hour of fun creating this image and building a piece of promo around it and doing the promo, then I will feel like I did the promo without it being so painful. I sugar-coated the part of the job I don't like with the part of the job I do like. Let's ask ourselves, you watching at home, how can you sugarcoat the part of the job you don't like with the parts of the job that you do like?
It sounds like you're great at compartmentalizing your mind. So you can get in writer mode and you refuse to be in editor mode while you're in writer mode, getting the book out. Then you know, okay, I'm this taskmaster, I'm the editor now. And then you can do the hybrid. And it sounds like you're really good at putting on these proverbial hats and going with what the hat is.
And I feel that that is a gift. A trick of my mind is that I can do two things at once, and those two things are take an action and observe myself taking the action. I'm good at analyzing myself. So that's the part that's gift. But also, there's a relentless practice of self-awareness. I'm constantly trying to know myself better, not for spiritual reasons, but for practical reasons. Because what is self-awareness but awareness of the self? So if I've had the experience in the past, which I've had many times, of trying to write and edit at the same time and seeing that it doesn't work, it's not efficient, then I can remind myself in the moment, it looks like you're editing when you should be writing. Try not to edit. Then if I can layer in some acceptance, you're not a bad person because you were editing when you should be writing. That's your process. And you're trying to improve your process, so be aware of your process and try to implement improvements. Like try to write more and edit less, and recognize that the time will come to edit later. This quality of compartmentalization you talk about, it's a quirk of my mind, but it's also a tool that I use. And so for everyone, one could say, you have the capacity to look at your actions and make judgments about those actions. It's hard to make those actions when the judgments come with negative noise. That is to say, when you're judging yourself versus evaluating the work. When you can say to yourself, today I was 75% writing and 25% editing. Or I'll give you a better example. Today I was 50% writing and 50% fear. That's a lousy percentage. I wish it were 75% writing and 25% fear. If I say to myself I'm a bad writer because I didn't do a better job, I'm lost. If I say to myself I did the best I did today, I'm going to try and do better tomorrow, then I'm demonstrating self-awareness and self-acceptance. And to me, that's the key to everything. Those two things in tandem. With self-awareness and self-acceptance, great practice of anything is possible.
Do you believe that we're antennas during the writing process?
Do I believe that we are antennas during the writing process?
Right, that we're receiving creative input?
Yes, I do. Here's why. Eastern philosophy describes creativity as carrying buckets to the river. What's implied is that there is a stream of information passing by. Life experience, art, the unknown, spirituality, whatever your antenna might pick up. It's all there. And all we need to do to access it is jump in the stream. So to me, if I'm having art or having writing and I feel inspired, again, remembering inspire means to breathe in, I'm breathing in information from outside. It might be information that I brought in from outside years ago, and is now stored in my head. It might be something that I'm just thinking about in the moment, which is I'm bringing in information from outer reality, from different parts of reality. With that said, I can acquire more information more effectively. I can do things to the river. I can dam the river. I can throw in irrigation pipes. I can use creativity strategically and with toolcraft. But what lies at the heart of the creative act is inspiration. There is something that inspires us to pick up a blue brush versus a yellow brush, to paint a doghouse versus a human house, to write an opera versus an operetta, to dance versus gymnastics. And that guiding light, that infusing spirit is what I think of when you speak of the antenna. I have another thing that I'd like to layer on this, and this is a really deep cut. We spend our lives trying to get to the bottom of the question, what is God? And we struggle with it for manifest reasons. It's been suggested that humans trying to understand God is like a fish trying to understand the ocean. You are within the thing you're trying to understand. It makes it very, very hard to understand it. But as I dig a little bit deeper into it, I think that there are a lot of things that we use as explanations for that which can't be explained. God, superstition, alchemy, astrology, necromancy, witchcraft, magical creatures, supernatural, yogic flying, past life regression. The list goes on and on. There are a lot of things we look at and say, that thing there is an attempt to explain the thing behind it. And my sense is none of these things can ever give us more than the merest glimpse of the unknown. Because the thing that we're trying to understand, it is minimally above us, below us, beside us, within us and without us, and all around us. But even more than that, it's in us and among us and around us in ways we can never know, because it is in us and among us and around us, and we are within it. So we are within a greater reality that we can't understand for the simple reason that we are within that greater reality. And all of our attempts to assign the number of parallel universes, or name the 8 billion names of God, or write and then believe in a book that explains the way the world works, whether that book is How to Live Life or the Book of Practice or the Bible, all of these things are merely unfulfilling attempts to know that which can never be known. And so I try to sit comfortably in the space of all of these efforts are simply efforts to explore, not to learn everything, but to broaden the boundaries to create more space within what I know and less space outside of what I know. A great example of this can be seen in the photos that are being sent back from Mars, believe it or not. If you asked somebody 200 years ago, let's say 5,000 years ago, what do you know about Mars? Mars is the god of war. Maybe that's 3,000 years ago. What do you know about gods? That thing in the sky, that's a god. That's the best I can do with the information I have available to me. It's up there, I'm down here, it seems more powerful than I am, must be a god. 500 years ago, if you ask what's Mars, if this is after the invention of the telescope, Kepler's work, that's a planet, it's out there. My reality is here. Before, my reality was only here, and God was up there, Mars, the god of war. Now my reality is a little bit bigger. There's this reality here, and these pinpoints of light that define the outer boundary of my reality. The world we're living in now, our visual apprehension of outer reality is streaming away from us faster than we can comprehend. We can create a visual understanding of the surface of Mars now, which our parents couldn't do and our grandparents couldn't dream of. So our sphere of reality now extends well beyond the Earth to Mars and beyond. And if you're absorbing photos of galaxies, distant galaxies from the Hubble Space Telescope or the Webb telescope, you're getting an even bigger picture of reality. Not that you can understand any of it, because how can you understand infinity? And how can you time eternity? You can't do these things. All you can do is keep pushing outward in all directions, and take satisfaction in growing your understanding to the best of your ability, rather than suffering because you don't know God.
Or we're in a giant simulator, and it seems like we're experiencing this.
Which is a great way of, if I want to experience flight, but I'm afraid of flying, I can get in a flight simulator and experience flight and add the feeling of flight to things that are known to me. This goes back to the challenge we were talking about before. How are you a writer in today's world when the job of a book is to give people a simulated experience? And you're asking them to do the job as partners by using their imagination to read your words and turn them into pictures. You're asking them to do that. If you asked them to do that 200 years ago, they would say, yes, please, because this is the only way I can interpret. I can imagine. I can inhabit an imagined reality. But now it's competing against countless imagined realities. Books, movies, TV, virtual reality, augmented reality. And we haven't even talked about AI and what versions of reality and ear reality that device will create. So it's hard out here for a writer. Yeah.
How do you know you have a book idea worth writing?
How do I know I have a book idea worth writing? Well, I must start by confessing that I've thought I've had a book idea worth writing many, many more times than I've been right about that. And my hard drive is filled with whole and half projects and books that I thought would sell and couldn't sell. I don't care about that. I don't ever imagine writing to be particularly efficient for me. I write 10 times more than I sell, and I think that's a friendly estimate. But your question's a good one. It's something that I'm thinking about now because I'm currently between books, and I'm asking myself, what do I think I would like my next book to be about? Here's the idea that I'm testing. I can't remember exactly what I'm calling it. It's called To Live Outside the Law. And it examines the question, how do people behave? What happens at the border between order and outlaw? And why do people go to those places and how do they act? And some of the things that I'm thinking about are, there were gambling ships outside the 3-mile limit off in Santa Monica Harbor at one point. They needed to get outside the law in order to operate effectively. Also, there are churches and cults who separate themselves from physical space, from authority, from organized authority, for freedom. We also note that places like Provincetown and Key West tend to accumulate freaks because freaks move farther and farther away until they reach a point where they can't move away anymore, and that's where they settle, at the end of the line. So we can find a certain type of mindset at the end of the line. And I'm interested in that, and I have in mind to do a series of vignettes on this. How will I know it will sustain as a book? I'll test it to a certain extent. I'll drill some sample wells, one might say. I'll write about one or two of these topics and see if they're interesting to me. I'll share them with other people. Is this something you'd read a whole book's worth on? I might whip up inquiries and send them around, see if there's something on the level of the pitch that people respond to. But if I look back on my life, I would say that mostly I've fallen into books. They've taken me by surprise. I might find myself musing on a book and then one day I just start writing it. That seems to work for me. A lot of people want to analyze the marketplace, which is the way to go, figure out what people are buying and write stuff like that. If that's how they plan to dock with the spaceship, the space station, that might work. At a certain point in my life, I wrote a series of novels based on the understanding that in writing this one novel, I slayed an old ghost. I dealt with something in my past that I really wanted to deal with. So I wrote the next novel by picking something else from my past that I really wanted to deal with, just for the intent of writing it and seeing if I could explore it enough to get past whatever it was that was bugging me.
And you could always go Hunter S. Thompson if you wanted to sort of see people on the fringes, hang out in bars,
Sure.
Take public transportation. You'll be surprised at the different stories you hear from people. You're waiting for a bus.
I think it's a given that we won't know if the book is going to work until we write it. But we also know that there are some books that we don't have information authority over, and we're not going to get that information authority without a whole lot of research or life experience that we don't necessarily want to do or have. I'll
Sure.
give you an example. I've always wanted to write a book about a certain incident in medieval history. I won't tell you what it was, it doesn't really matter. But I know that I'm not interested in doing the research that would make me enough of an authority to write with authority on the subject. I think a lot of people who set out to write novels, in particular first novels, don't have information authority and use derived information authority. That is to say, they base their work on everything they've read in other people's works. They write novels like they think novels are supposed to be written, rather than writing novels that come from their own lived experience and their true voice. Let's see if I can connect the dots here. Somebody might say, I know that romance novels are selling, and here's a book that tells me how to write a romance novel. And if I follow the steps in this book on how to write a romance novel, I will succeed in writing a romance novel that I can sell. That might be true. But it might also be that the construction is so lifeless and so derivative of everything you've learned about writing romance novels that it just doesn't work at all. We won't know until we test your capacity as a writer. And every time you write a novel, whether it succeeds or fails, you do two things. One, you test your capacity as a writer. Two, you advance your capacity as a writer. That's why we undertake the task.
Sure, and nowadays we can just type in anything and get a video to come back on someone that really is in that situation. We don't really have to go out and experience it and, you know.
That's another real interesting point. A lot of what creative expression is about, historically, is overcoming limitations of technology. Let's take an old example. Cave drawings. What is the technology for creative expression? It's ink made out of red clay and a stick and a cave wall. That's a pretty primitive technology, and the best they could do was a stick figure representation of people and animals. But they put it in a safe place. 10,000 years later, some of that art still exists. So you can't say they failed. They made the best of the situation. They did the best they could with available technology. The world we live in now offers so many ways to experience reasonable versions of reality, simulations of reality, that the technical gap between real reality and imagined reality is getting smaller and smaller. Think about the phrase virtual reality. If you put on a VR goggle and let your mind go to it, you're in an altered reality. You don't need to write a story of that altered reality in order to imagine what it's like, if you can have the real simulated experience of what it's like, which will have profound changes to the way we think about story and how we think about film and television and how we think about art. Because technology is inescapable. Art will absorb technology. It never turns its back on it. It might decide not to use it situationally, but it always takes new technologies in. This is why we have acrylic paints and not just oil paints.
If you were interested in storytelling, you may also like our new book, Story Questions, the sponsor of today's video. It's a story tool that offers you over 1,500 story questions that you can use as story prompts. It's packed with over 40 categories, so whether you are in the brainstorming stages, developing characters, dialogue, or rewriting, it can help you at every stage of the writing process. Think about this statement. Most powerful stories are just great answers to strong questions. We've linked up to story questions in the information section below. Now back to the interview. You'd said that you had been told and been tested that you were, high IQ since you were a child. Mm-hmm. Did you get this compartmentalization because you were in class and you were bored and you always knew, like you had one sort of eye on the blackboard and then the other eye was over here, or I don't know.
Oh, absolutely, okay. absolutely. And I was recognized as such. Teachers in classrooms would say Johnny would do better if he paid more attention. But you couldn't map it against my grades because the grades are all great. Why? Not because I'm brilliant, but because I am programmed to achieve academically. My brother and sister and I all were. My parents were very gentle people. It's not like they were scaring us, but they did create the expectation. One thing you can do with your Vorhaus brain is get good grades in school. Please go do that. And I used the phrase Vorhaus brain just now. I consider it a gift. We Vorhauses as a group, as a family, we got pretty good brains. Can't hit a jump shot, can't run very fast, are not tall, don't have hair, some of us. Got good brains. It makes a difference. The compartmentalization has its roots in that, because certainly that was where I learned how to think and how to learn and how much extra bandwidth I had. Case in point, when I was in college, I took a degree in creative writing, and a lot of the classes were just discussions. Somebody would read a story and we'd talk about it. Well, I could not stay engaged, and I was just so bored. I would try to write letters, but they were too distracting. If I'm writing, I'm not paying attention. That didn't work. I tried to pay attention and inevitably fell asleep, so that didn't work. I took up embroidery. I literally started bringing embroidery projects to class. I'm a 21-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid in Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh in the late 1970s, sitting in a classroom doing embroidery. And every now and then a professor would say, "Don't you think that's kind of rude?" And I'll say, "I think snoring would be ruder. And if I don't have this to occupy my hands while I give you all of my attention with my ears, I'm going to fall asleep." And they bought it.
Well, aren't you using a different part of your brain, though?
Sure.
To do it?
Yes, but a complementary part of the brain. Let's break it down. If I'm trying to write a letter and pay attention in class at the same time, I'm trying to use the language center of my brain to do two different things at the same time. And I know this doesn't work. Like today, I know it doesn't work. If I were listening to a podcast and texting at the same time, I couldn't hear what's in the podcast. I can only focus on what I'm texting. I lose it. You do it too. It's very common. We stop paying attention when we start writing, so that doesn't work. The embroidery, that's a repetition task. It's poke the needle here, pull the needle out, poke the needle here, pull the needle out. So it's motor control. It's the brain doing motor eye-hand coordination, motor control tasks. But the whole language center of the brain is not occupied in any sense. This was the problem. If all I'm doing is listening, language center of the brain is having a party, but nobody else is invited. If I'm doing embroidery while I'm listening, then more parts of my brain are engaged and I feel better. Who doesn't watch TV while fixing dinner or listen to a podcast while doing a jigsaw puzzle? But I can't listen to a podcast and do a crossword puzzle because the crossword puzzle is language. That podcast is language. I can't do both those things at the same time. I can do a jigsaw puzzle, listen to a podcast, and sometimes I do that just to recharge my batteries. Sorry, I'm admonishing myself because I'm not telling the complete truth. I'm currently doing a jigsaw puzzle because my wife bought me one for Christmas, and she thought it was a good idea. I was completely opposed to it. I said to myself, I'm not the sort of person who does jigsaw puzzles. That's just, to me, it's a waste of time. But she sweetened the pot by giving me a jigsaw puzzle made from one of my own works of art.
Oh, great.
Oh, how can I not do
Wow.
I have to rise to that challenge. And because I'm willing to say to myself, okay, you're just being hard-nosed, try to be a little bit more accepting. Let's try it and see what I get out of this experience of doing a jigsaw puzzle. It's got its value. It takes my brain to a different place. I'm not having a terrible time when I'm doing a jigsaw puzzle. I think mostly it's the should voice in my head that's saying, this is in no way as productive as you could be. You should be writing a novel. So what we arrive at, damn it, no matter how enlightened you are and how well you think you have the problem solved, there's an infinity of unenlightened hovering over your head. There's an infinite gap between the person you are and the person you want to be. And the job of closing that gap requires some vigilance. For me, this means somebody comes along and says, you might get some value out of doing a jigsaw puzzle. And I say to myself, no, I don't do those. Those aren't for me. I'm getting in the way of my own enlightenment. I say to myself, well, all right, I haven't done a jigsaw puzzle since I was a kid. Maybe I'm outdated. Let's try it and see. If I do it and want to do another one, I'll do another one. If I do it and don't want to do another one, I won't do another one. But in this moment, I'm reminding myself, this very gap that I'm talking about, the gap between what we seek to achieve and what we actually achieve, what we seek to live up to and what we actually live up to, what beliefs we seek to have, what actions we seek to have, and the ones that we actually end up with. The gap is as wide for me as it is wide for everyone. And the gap is always infinite and yet measurable and closable, weirdly. We're never going to close the gap, but we can always take action toward closing the gap. We can't close it completely, but we can make it smaller.
John, if we can sort of indulge ourselves for just one question here, that is, we are in a process of finishing a book. And we're not totally there yet. It's a tool book for writers. As someone who has written and released over, 20 books, I believe?
30 now.
30? Okay, on your website. You have
my own website, bafflegabbooks.com or johnvorhaus.com. They'll both get to the same place.
Okay. What advice can you give us on getting a book out there to the public?
Well, you're already making one smart move that you might not be aware of, and that is you're writing a how-to book. In today's market, there are two classes of information. Information that people need and information that people just want. Information that people need, people will pay for information they need. They won't necessarily pay for information they just want because they really don't have to. Information they want is what we call entertainment. So if I need to know how to be a writer, I'm drawn to books that will teach me that. And if I sample the books and I feel like it's going to move me toward that goal, I'm likely to buy it. I need what this book has. I need this information, so I'm going to pay for it. But if all I want is to be entertained by a story, I don't really need to pay for a story because the entertainment value of one story can be found in another story, and there are a lot of stories. You could read novels for 100 lifetimes for free, find them online, and never run out of content that you might enjoy. But if you want to be a stand-up comic, you're going to have to buy a book on stand-up comedy or just get out there and do it yourself. And the market that you've defined for yourself, people who want to be writers and need to be writers will seek the information that you have. Now, with that said, what can I offer you that will help? Be liberal in giving it away, because that's how you build a brand. It might look like you're undercutting sales, but if you let people sample your wares and find that there's value in it, that will help them make the buy decision. So I put the first chapter of all of my books on my website, for example, and Amazon does the same thing, so that you can sample the book and see if there's enough value to make it worth what you're paying for it. You have followers, people who follow your brand, so they are your market. They should be tended to liberally and respectfully. I don't know if you have given thought to how you'll do like newsletters and social media and all of that. I'm not an expert in any of that. All I know is it needs to be done. And if there's a should in my life that is unfulfilled, I should be doing a lot more promo than I am. Don't imagine that anyone else will be a champion for your book. You must be a champion for your own book. Many of your peers will be too busy trying to be champions of their own book to be a champion of your book. And no one will ever love your work as much as you love it. That's not just true for you, it's true for me, it's true for most writers. We write it, we fall in love with it, we fall passionately in love with it. And other people read it and they say, yeah, okay, that was pretty good, I got that. I'll give you an example. You have in your hands my latest book, Cartoons for Smart People. And you'll go through that book, it won't take you more than...
Want to show
Oh,
it?
thank you. Thank you.
Cool
You
cover.
must mean this book, Cartoons for Smart People, available at Amazon or johnvorhaus.com. That's JOHNVORHAUS.com. Oh, let's sample one, shall we?
Sure, please.
Oh, here's a good cartoon. Here's a cartoon that says, I'm not infallible. But if you look closely, you see it says, I'm not infallible. So the very person who's claiming to be infallible is in fact fallible. And that is recursive humor, which is one of the many forms of humor I use in this book, which isn't the point. The point is, since it's a book of cartoons, it won't take you 10 minutes to read it. And you'll laugh at some of them and you'll scratch your head at others of them, but at the end of the day, you'll have a distant relationship with it. I can't open that book without thinking about every single piece of work I did to create those images and how much love and sweat and hard work I put into them. I have a very deep and personal bond with this book that no other human can possibly have. And so you'll experience this as well. You'll love your book more than other people love your books, and that may be dismaying to you because you want them to appreciate the hard work that went into it and the value that exists within it. And there may be a gap between your expectation and what the audience actually tells you about it. I will give you another piece of advice that you won't like. I didn't like it when I heard it. I had made a record album. This was back in the 80s. And I was on a folk festival bill with a famous folk singer. And I said to him, hey, I just did my first album. What advice do you give me? He said, do another one right away. What? He says, yeah, it's not about one album. You have to build a body of work. And if you don't build a body of work, you're not going to have traction in any field of endeavor. So I would say, don't treat this as the book, but as the first book. And then having written it and gotten feedback in terms of sales or comments, ask yourself, where do I want to take this next? To put it in my context. I spent a lot of time writing books on writing. And at a certain point, I wanted to go beyond that and talk about things that were useful to writers, but useful to other people as well. And that's what got me to the Book of Practice. As a writer, you ask yourself, where am I now? Where do I want to go next? And if you do it fearlessly and joyfully, then you can do it with passion and purpose. Let's touch on this. We've talked about these things separately. Let's synthesize them. Passion is the stuff that I'm good at and enjoy doing. Purpose is the stuff that makes me feel like my life is being well lived. So if I have a passion for teaching writers, it's something I'm good at and enjoy doing. And if I use my passion to teach writers in other parts of the world, then I'm fulfilling my purpose. I'm using the stuff I'm good at to live my life the way I want to. Again, thinking about the first responder. His passion is saving lives. His passion, the stuff he's good at, is breaking into buildings, climbing ladders, turning on hoses, turning off hoses, whatever, laying down fire lines. The purpose is saving lives. So that person is occupying a space at the pure intersection of passion and purpose. And that's where you want to put your practice. So you guys who clearly have a purpose in teaching writers, teaching and training writers, which you do through your videos, creatives of all type, you also have passion in terms of strength, skills related to understanding what writers need and how to communicate solutions to writers' problems. So in creating this book, you are operating at the intersection of your passion and purpose. You're using stuff you're good at to achieve a goal that you determine to be worthwhile. As I look at all the books that I've written, some of them were not at the unity of passion and purpose. Some of them were just playthings or didn't really serve a higher purpose. Maybe just experiments, which is okay. That's fine too. But for folks at home, if you're asking yourself, you want to know, am I on the right path? Ask yourself, where I stand now, am I at the intersection of passion and purpose? Because if you're there, you're on the right path by definition. And if you're not there, you're not on the right path by definition. I'll give you an example. You might not know this, you guys might not know this. In addition to all of my other practices, I have a practice of educational consulting. I help people get into graduate school, top 10 business schools, primarily, collaboratively with my wife and kind of acquired present in my life because of the work that she has done. I see a lot of similarity between my clients trying to get into business school and writers trying to write a book. So when I tell my clients trying to get into business school, one thing you're going to have to answer to in going to business school is, why are you going to business school? What purpose are you serving? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm just going to go to business school and get an education, figure it out. That's not going to work because you'll be competing against people who know exactly what they're going to do. So the first job for everyone going to business school is to try and figure out their career vision. And if they don't know what it is, I tell them to look at the intersection of passion and purpose because it can always be found there. To take it back to you, once you finish this book and put it out there in the world, the next question will simply be, what else exists at the intersection of my passion and purpose, and how shall I choose to exploit it next?
So in other words, don't just rest on one book, don't just rest on one album. Keep going, have a body of work, and have it be things that you're passionate about, but that's also providing some type of value for someone that they may not necessarily need, but they might want.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, I was.
Oh, that's okay.
I was thinking about someone who is answering that from their insecurity and saying,
Oh gosh.
saying, how can I build a body of work when I've done nothing? How can I even think about building a body of work based on many books if I haven't even written and released my first book? It's enough to make you lose your mind. And so I would just offer the experience of this practitioner. I arrived at book writing kind of late in the game. I was 30 when I released the comic TOOLBOX, which was my first book and my best book. You'd think after 30 years I would have written a book that topped that. But no, that book is head and shoulders the most important thing I've ever written. That book will live on after I'm dead, buried, and gone. Cartoons for Smart People will not have that fate, I'm pretty sure. The point is, I was 30 when I wrote my first book. I'm 69 now, so that means that I've written less than a book a year, but something on approaching a book a year, which is not that heavy a lift. My books usually take me around 6 to 9 months to crank out. I write fast and I'm focused. I put in a lot of hours, but you'd be amazed at how much time you have to achieve creative outcomes. And I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to me, I'm speaking to everyone. As long as we're walking around on the planet and breathing in and breathing out, we still have time to achieve creative outcomes. We might not have as much time as we want, we might not be using it as effectively as we like, but there's a lot of it, and there's more than we imagine. I told you I've written 30 books, you know this, but you also know I can't count the number of scripts I've written. I can't count the number of classes I've taught. I can't count the number of people I've helped get into business school. I can't count the number of images I've created, and they number into the tens of thousands. And it's not like I'm spending all day, every day creating outcomes. There's a lot you can accomplish if you just get out of the way of your own fear.
Are you a full-time artist, John?
Not even close. I'm barely a writer at all in this phase of my life, and proudly so. It took me a long time to get to this point. Let me tell you what I mean. First of all, in my youth, I used to spend, for every 5 minutes I spent writing, I would spend 4 minutes worrying and 1 minute writing. That was the math. 1 minute of writing, 4 minutes of panic. Very typical. And I was aware of it. By the time I was writing situation comedies, I was aware of how much time I spent worrying about the bad outcomes. Where I am now as a writer, I've kind of flipped it around. About 4 minutes of productivity for every 1 minute of worry. But the worry's not gone. As a writer, I'm always second guessing and obsessing and feeling like I'm not making the choices that I want to make. So fear, dissatisfaction never goes away. Over time, it gets less and less. So in theory, I'm much more of a productive writer than I used to be. In practice, I don't do that much writing anymore. It's been about 10 years now since I started investigating art, and I found that my artistic practice meets my current needs better than my writing practice does. The writing that I do is writing for me, like I said, my memoir, John Vorhaus, Year by Year, because the writing that I'm doing now is more for me, because it can be for me. I don't know if I've told you this. When poker was hot, I wrote 10 books on poker. I just swallowed up that market and wrote the crap out of poker. Then the market dried up and I stopped writing about poker, which is fine. The market for my work is such that it's really hard for me to know what I can bring into the market that will make a difference in the market. So when I weigh the question, do I want to spend a year writing the words that will comprise this book, with the fair expectation that the book won't move the needle, by which I mean it won't change my brand substantially, it won't go viral, it won't be a New York Times bestseller. All of these, this is not pessimism, this is reality. The things that I would need to do in order for those outcomes to transpire, I don't want to do. I'm not going to do them. I don't have to do them. Query letters to agents, a dozen different book proposals in circulation all at the same time. These are the crafts of a working writer. For me now, I'm a hobbyist. No, I'm going to put that in a different way. I am an attempted retiree. I have a lot of trouble with retirement because I'm a person of doing. I define myself by taking action. So what does retirement look like for me? I'm going to sit at my computer and create. That's all I want to do anyhow. Turn my brain into outcomes. But because of where I am in my life, I don't need to write and sell books. And because of where I am in my practice, I find that there are other parts of my practice that I'm more interested in exploring than writing books. But who knows? I'm going to wake up next week and look at my desk and say, I got nothing to do right now. I better find something to do. Maybe I'll write another book, and I'll take myself by surprise and start writing another book. And all of these thoughts about there's no point in writing another book because I can't sell it and find a market for it, they'll fall away. I won't think about them. I'll just, oh, this is my new toy, and I'll write the crap out of it to the best of my ability. Would you like to know what I'm really working on now?
Yes.
The answer will surprise you. I'm making time capsules.
Oh.
I'm preparing suitcases full of intellectual property,
Wow.
art and words, for my grandnieces and nephews. I did it for my nieces and nephews 25 years ago, and this year they will open their 25-year time capsules. I'm now doing time capsules that will be opened in 2050. There's a lot going on here. One thing that's on my mind is I don't have anything better to do. This will occupy my time. Another thing that's on my mind is I've reached a point in my life where I'm more interested in harvesting my existing intellectual property than creating new intellectual property. And this is one way of reflecting on and synthesizing all the work that I've done in my life. Packing it for time travel is a way of thinking about it and asking myself, what do I really want to preserve? And how do I want to preserve it? Then the third element is, I don't care about Amazon sales next week, but I care about my legacy. I care about all of the things that I've thought about and all of the things that I've created. And I care about how those things will live beyond my life. I don't have a mindset that says, I'm going to look down from heaven and see everybody reading and enjoying my books and understanding how great I was at last. That's not where this is. It's rather this. In 1994, by luck, I wrote a book called The Comic Toolbox. In 2024, I can judge that book a classic. How do I know it's a classic? Because it's stayed in print for 30 years. Generations of writers have found their way to it. So I know that book is going to be in the world when I'm no longer in the world. It is a piece of legacy that I have created. I think of it as my carrier wave. It's the piece of legacy that carries all of my other stuff, just because it's the one thing that everybody who knows me from. And so I'm delighted to create other art and other books and hang them on that carrier wave and send them into the future. But I'm not content to do that because I have a lot of thought about what creates value. Hand me this book again, this Cartoons for Smart People, available at johnvorhaus.com or bafflegabbooks.com. In its current incarnation, this thing doesn't have very much value. It was printed last month, so it doesn't have a lot of time value behind it. It's fragile, it's vulnerable to destruction. My name is not big enough to give it value, a little bit of value, not a lot of value. So as things now stand, this book is vulnerable. It could fail to make it into the future. But if I take the simple act of putting that book into a locked suitcase with an instruction, don't open this suitcase until 2050, I'm giving that book and everything else in that suitcase a 25-year boost into the future. I'm giving it 25 years where the value that's in it will be protected by the people who have it in their basement or garage, protected because it has value, family value. They will want to know what Uncle John put in a time capsule 25 years ago. They'll protect it. And when it emerges from its 25-year nap, it'll have 25 years worth of value in it. If nothing else, everything in it will be 25 years old. And somebody will look at that book and say, that's not just a funny book of cartoons, it's an artifact of a time we no longer live in. And then the value will multiply. And somebody might say, this book's already been around for 25 years. I'm not going to be the one who throws it away. I'm not going to be the one who ends its life. I'm going to preserve it. And then the ideas that existed in this ephemeral state in my head for the less than 100 years that I was on the planet will have a second, a third life in other circumstances that I can't imagine and may never arise, but that I can still work toward and take satisfaction in. I was working on this project today, and one of the discoveries that I made was I'm not just doing this for the grandkids and the great nieces and nephews. I'm doing it for myself. It's like that memoir project. It's an opportunity for me to reflect on my body of work and ask myself, what matters? What of this work do I still stand behind? What do I not care about? What do I respect or see in a different light? What do I want to preserve? What will people think about this 25 years from now? All of these questions are informing me, giving me more information about myself, how I think about my past, my present, and my future. So it would seem that I'm making time capsules for other people in other times, but I'm really making them for myself in this time.
Sure. That's such a great idea. I'm wondering, what are you doing logistically to protect the items in the suitcases? Where do you store them so that there's no water damage, heat?
Let me borrow from experience. When I did this 25 years ago, I was moving houses and I realized I had 3 classes of junk. Junk I definitely wanted to keep, junk I definitely wanted to throw away, and a whole lot of junk that I didn't want to keep or throw away. So I put all of that stuff into cardboard boxes and shipped the boxes to my brother and sister and my stepdaughter. My brother and sister, sorry, I've got to get this right. Shipped it to my brother and sister's kids, my nieces and nephews. But they were little at the time, so the boxes went into my brother and sister's basement or garage. I made the choice to include nothing in it that was organic, like no food, soda cans, anything like that. Because I'd had the experience of saving a soda can for a long time and having it explode and make fungus of horrible. So everything that goes into the suitcase will be inert. It will be. It won't be volatile. Left alone, it's not going to disintegrate. If it's kept inside the suitcase and the suitcase is kept in a basement or garage or attic, should be okay. If there's fragile stuff, I'm protecting it with, padding. There will be works of art there that are in glass or acrylic, and those will need to be padded, and the suitcase itself is hard-sided. The refinement this time around is small rolling suitcases are easier to store for 25 years than big cardboard boxes. The suitcase will be labeled, it will be locked, it will be sealed with tamper-proof tape or sealing wax. I haven't quite decided yet. Wow. I'm investigating this. But it doesn't ride 25 years in the future unless people agree to let it ride 25 years in the future. Could be that one day in their teens, one of my great nieces will wake up and say, I'm going to open that thing now and I don't care about the consequences. And then maybe she'll get to the tamper-proof tape and say, oh, Jesus, I don't want to be the one to cut the security tape. Somebody else got it. All right, back in the closet it goes. But it's small, it's a rolling suitcase. It can move around with people's lives for 25 years. That's not that long a time. Wow. So there will be paper, there will be glass and metal fabrications and acrylic fabrications. A lot of ephemera, stuff that's current now or maybe already old. Poker chips as an example. I put the poker chips in because they might actually be worth some money 25 years from now as collectibles. And I want this to be a treasure hunt for the kids. So I do want there to be stuff in there that's not just all self-indulgent, just my body of work. I want it to be a rewarding experience for someone who will be 25 or 30 years old when they open it in 25 years from now. I'm also including hard drives. And it's worth thinking about this because my research tells me that solid state drives, SSD drives, will not last for 25 years. But I don't believe that's true, and I'm determined to find out. It doesn't cost me but $20 to buy a 1 terabyte solid state drive, and I can put, this is the part that boggles my mind, I can put 50 years of creative practice, my whole entire body of work, on one hard drive, no bigger than a telephone, no bigger than a cell phone. So if it turns out that the physical version of Cartoon for Smart People goes viral in 2050, somebody's going to figure out a way to get access to that hard drive, and they're going to find a file labeled Cartoons for Smart People, the second 100. There's a whole other body of work in there that may or may not ever get exploited. If you ask me, I would say none of it will ever. Nobody's going to be excited about it. Because what did I just say before? Nobody loves your stuff as much as you do. I'm making a time capsule that I love. Other people might be interested in it, but they're not going to love it the same way I love it. It's not their life. It's my life.
You know, it's interesting, sorry, just to just sort of segue to this, is that someone on Twitter had found all these photographs in the Altadena fire, and they put them online. They said, if this belongs to you or your family, please let me know. I'd like to get it to you. And they were Polaroids, and it was very powerful. And I don't know these people, but just to see a snapshot into someone's life and realize that might be all they have left and how important that would be. So it just kind of segues to what you're talking about.
Suppose I have in mind to do about half a dozen of these time capsules, maybe more, see how the year goes. It's a 2025 project. But I'm not doing them all at once. I'm doing them related to travel plans. It happens that in early February, I'll see my brother, who will be going from where I see him to where his daughter lives, and my great nephew lives. So he's getting the first one, and I have to have it done in 3 weeks. So the pressure of a deadline, that's always good. But let's imagine it happens like this. I have this idea to do a half a dozen time capsules, and then who knows, maybe I'll have a career making time capsules. And this is the first one. And I give it to my brother, who gives it to his daughter, who stashes it for her son. And then next week I get hit by a car and killed. So whatever my intention was, that's the only time capsule that exists. That puts a whole different value on it, just like those Polaroids. All that's left is those Polaroids. They have a value that is so much higher than they had 2 weeks ago, immeasurably higher. And we don't know how value is going to rise or fall. A lot of people are contemplating a phrase of my coinage these days because of the fires: you don't own things, things own you. I'm very aware of how I am owned by my things, the things that I've collected. And one of the reasons for this project is to get some of that stuff out of my life and stop being owned by it. But people who have lost everything in fire have an opportunity, I'm sure they're not thinking about it in these terms, have an opportunity to imagine to live a realized life without the stuff. It might not be an opportunity that they wanted or welcome. I'm certain I wouldn't welcome it. But I gave this some thought. If I did lose my house in the fire, I would mourn for the stuff, for sure. But I would also recognize that I've been set free from a lot of stuff that physically holds me down. And then I would try to cherish the stuff that I still have. That's why I like these time capsules, because everything that goes in there is something that I had the intent to put in there, which means that it at least had meaning to somebody once upon a time. And it will certainly have meaning to other people in 25 years' time, maybe less, probably a lot less, maybe more, but certainly different meaning, simply because they will be reacting to it differently than I react to it.
But is your art really owning you, and is that a bad thing? Doesn't it give you purpose? I
was driving over here today thinking about a project that I might like to do. and figuring that I might end up talking about it here. And it speaks to this question about what owns you. Among other things that I find as I go through my stuff, I have stacks and stacks of promo cards that I've made for various books over time. And each one of those promo cards represents a lot of creative effort. It's not possible for me to throw them away. They're little business card size things. I cannot throw them away. So in that sense, I am owned by the image. I am owned by the act of creation. It's not within my power to throw it away. It is barely within my power to stick it in a time capsule where I can't see it ever again in life. And I feel like Frodo trying to destroy the Ring of Power. Just take the ring off and throw it in the suitcase. You'll be free. But the idea, the thing that I was thinking about making was maybe I'll take all of these promo cards and do a shadow box of some kind out of it. I got a nice piece of a wooden box that I'd like to do an art project in, and I thought I'll put all the cards in a background, glue them in place, lay the thing flat down like this. Then I'll take a bunch of the cards and run them through the shredder so that I have shredded promo card dust. And then I'll make lines of glue on the whole images, the cards that exist, and sprinkle the card dust on the lines of glue and let the whole cards and the destroyed cards kind of communicate with one another. This is the artistic idea that I'm pursuing. Anytime you try to explain art in words, it gets confusing. But the title of the piece will be Entropy, and we can see the entropy taking place. The thing went from a book to a promo card for a book to shredded versions of the promo card. But now look, the whole thing has been reinvented as a piece of art in and of itself. So entropy plus rising from the ashes, in a sense. And then my final thought, in this whole stack of thoughts driving over here, was, suppose I do create that work of art. Then what? I have another piece of art in the house, taking up space, going into a time capsule, trying to find its way into a gallery? I don't know. You can see I'm having trouble with this, but this is the problem we all have. I've created the thing, now what? I have to create it because I have this urge. I have to exploit it because I have that urge too. And if I create it and I don't exploit it, and I just have it, that's when it becomes a burden to me. That's when I am owned by my art. If I create it and give it away or sell it, then I'm not owned by it. But you can see the flaw in my plan is I don't sell. I create, I give away, I don't sell. Am I afraid to put myself out there? Am I a 69-year-old who recognizes that art, like stand-up comedy, is a young person's game, and there's really no fruitful path for me in it? Am I the sort of person who doesn't need the money that comes from selling and therefore can't be bothered to do the work of selling? I don't have the answer to these questions. But what I would say to you, our job isn't to have the answers. Our job is to explore the questions and not blame ourselves for the answers we get.
Sure. Yeah, that's fascinating. That reminds me of your friend that wrote the book that was 300 plus pages?
350,000 words.
Oh, the words. Okay, right. And I guess his intention is not to sell it, but there was a need. He needed to sit down and do this. So whatever comes with that. And I know there's been arguments in the past with our interviews where why would I want my work just to sit in these hard drives and great. So now it's just terabytes. It's not actually a finished a film or something. But if you can't censor wanting to do something, and if it's sort of festering inside of you, you have to do it.
We touched on this before. So much of the work we do will never see light of day. That's just the nature of things, and that's not new to us. It's the history of art. It's the history of writing. Far more art has been made than has been seen by orders of magnitude. Far more words have been written than have been seen. In the ideal, we do these acts of creation and they are celebrated by people we know and people we don't know. We become famous and celebrated for the art we create. That's the ideal. in reality, most of us will create more work than we're celebrated for. So we have to find a way to feel good about that. We have to find a way to take satisfaction in the work that nobody sees, either because the work brings us satisfaction just as acts of creation, or because we experience ourselves taking on tasks and meeting those challenges and achieving growth, achieving our goals and moving on, becoming better versions of ourselves. Or because we see the act of creation as aligned with our purpose. And this, now I'm thinking about my friend. His purpose is to create a 350,000 word act of pure self-indulgence and do it to the best of his ability. His purpose is not to have people understand and celebrate that work. It's the nature of the work that nobody's going to read it, and people who do read it won't understand it, and those who understand it won't celebrate it. Unless I'm completely wrong and he ends up being like James Joyce by happy accident. But he has made the decision that if he's to be in line with his purpose, then he must do these actions. He must write these words in order to feel fulfilled and in order to feel that he's living life according to the controlling ideas that he has established for himself. Same for me, same for you, same for all of us. We figure out what our controlling idea is and then try to conform our actions around that controlling idea as much as possible.
And also, too, having a famous work of art can be a burden, in the sense that you could be also hated for it. It could be construed as a political piece. You could be harmed for it.
You could be harmed for it, exactly. You could be penalized for
Salman Rushdie.
As an example, Salman Rushdie. Yeah. I say this next part with self-mockery because it was never really a risk, but I was always afraid of being really famous, because I understood that once you become famous, you can't become unfamous, and you're not going to know what the consequences of that actions. You're not going to know how it is until it's too late to go back. So I'm known by people who know me, and I am celebrated by people who celebrate me. But the people who know me and celebrate me do so because I give them direct value. That is to say, I have taught them things that made a difference in their lives. So this is another part of my legacy. I'm known by the people who know me. I'm not known by people who buy Harlequin romances or paperback novels in airport bookstores. Would love to have been Tom Clancy.
Yeah.
That wasn't my gift.
And you're not chased through the airport by...
But then again, I'm not chased through the airport by paparazzi. So
you can take your time capsule in a... Yeah.
I want to tie this to something you guys said about your project. You're not releasing information about it until it's copyrighted. You don't need to worry about that. No one's ever going to steal it. It's just not going to happen. And it's like, if I'm worried about being famous, being too famous, and that's the thing that's keeping me from writing, I should probably rethink that. That is to say, if I were you and you're worried about how bad it's going to be when you're famous, don't worry about that. Just do some writing and see how it feels after that. Likewise, with you or anybody else, there's a lot of people who say, I don't want to put my work out there because people might steal it. Stealing it isn't the problem. Ignoring it, that's the problem. That's what will likely happen. Oh my gosh, I just remembered something else I've embarked upon, and this will sound palpably insane. I've launched a project called the Artifact Project. And the idea is I will take some image of mine, drawn, photographed, digital, whatever. I've created a frame for it, and I'm posting a new image inside that frame every day, forever. I'm posting it on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's being completely ignored. I started it on January 1st, so I'm just started with it, and it's completely open-ended and roundly ignored. I'm not getting likes, I'm not getting follows, it's not doing anything, and it's going to continue to not do anything for a long, long time, except it's a daily challenge to me to be engaged in my practice in a tangible way. And after a while, it'll be a daily challenge to me just to keep the string alive. What's going to break the string? Something's going to break the string eventually, my death, if nothing else. And what will be left in the cloud is a long-term act of creation that on the face of it looks insane. Who would sentence himself to posting a certain image of a certain kind within a certain range every day forever? But somebody's going to look on that and say, well, there was a lot of work there, a lot of initial work, and then a lot of reinterpolation, a lot of harvesting. A lot of thought went into this. I can't necessarily tell what all the thought was, but it's all there. This guy was up to something. I don't know what the something was, but there was a purpose. I don't mean a capital B purpose. There was a reason that he did this. And I think the reason is just to see if I can do it. There can be no happy accident with your body of work if your body of work doesn't exist. There probably won't be a happy accident with your body of work. Your particular novel won't be a bestseller. Your particular artwork won't hang in a museum. Your particular song won't get played on the radio. This is inevitable. But there are happy accidents, and none of them can take place if the work doesn't exist. So if you want to have any shot at all in having your work be celebrated, it stands to reason you have to create that work and do what you can to make it good enough to make it worth celebrating. This project that I'm thinking about, not one of those images is high art. A lot of them are just jokes. But if you multiply an image set by 365 by 10, then you've got 36,000 images. So if I live to be 80, I can generate, I might have the math wrong, 365 times 3,600 images. Anyway, whole lot of images. A single unified artistic statement that might just be high art, might just be fine art. We'll find out.
Well, you mentioned age. Now, I watched a biopic about a Finnish artist. Forgive me, I'm blanking on her name. I need to go back and look at it. Maybe I can put it in the comments. But it opens with her being interviewed by a journalist back in, I guess, the 1800s or close to the turn of the century or something. And she's kind of being resurrected and put back into the public. And she needs the money, and her family kind of relies on her and kind of uses her. And anyway, some wealthy patrons come to call, and they want her paintings. She doesn't really want to sell them, but they need the money. And a young man is there, handsome guy, and he kind of takes a liking to her, and she develops an infatuation for him. And he then wants to come back into her life and write a book about her and teach me to paint. In the end, he sort of has her on a yo-yo, like sort of goes away and comes back and introduces his fiancée and things like that. Disrupts her life a lot. But her work was refound. That was my point. And so even though she was, I think, 53 at the time the movie takes place, which now doesn't really seem that old, but I guess during that time, and as a female, she was considered washed up. But there was a resurgence, and she was refound. And anyway, I guess my point being that people, maybe age is sort of, I know there's so much pressure, especially in LA, put on age.
Yeah, I think a lot about age, as one might imagine. My first idea is I'm in the third act of my life, in the last third of my life. We can argue. In the last quarter, maybe, we'll find out. My motto is finish hard. I don't want to retire. I want to keep doing stuff as long as I can. So that's my controlling idea. But it has caused me to rethink my relationship with work. And I never really thought it would, because I'm not a retiring kind of guy. But throughout my professional life, there were professional reasons for doing the work that I did. Not all of those reasons apply anymore. And if I'm still doing the same work for reasons that are outmoded or outdated, that's not helpful to me. I think that it's more important for me to do work now that serves the person I am now. I'll give you an example. I like to draw, and I like to do stuff by hand. My hand doesn't like it. My eyes don't like it. So I do more and more left-handed mouse digital stuff, because my eye and my hand work better, just as a compensation, as a fact of age, let's say. I can anticipate my art and my writing being in my practice. My creative practice will continue. I'm a fish in the ocean. I'm a fish in that ocean. I can't not swim in creative spaces. I hope to keep traveling and teaching for as long as I can. I think that string's going to run out sooner than the art stuff, simply because travel becomes harder as one becomes older. I take pride in traveling effectively. Like, I'm taking a trip in March. I'm going to Wales for work and Finland for work.
Oh, Finland.
And that'll be great, but I'm mindful. I want to make sure that the travel works well, because I like to travel. I like to travel efficiently. The market for my traveling and teaching has not played out. I came out of the pandemic thinking I was never going to work overseas again, only to discover my reputation went up a lot during the pandemic. The way I described it is, a lot more people know me than I know me. And that makes it much easier for me to sell myself into those markets. I can't, let's be frank, let's have a frank appraisal balance of things. I can't sell art. I don't have the capacity. But I can sell intellectual property. I can sell teaching. I have that capacity. That's a product I can move. So part of my thinking is sell the product that will sell, and don't try to sell the product that doesn't sell. That's a good way of thinking about it. If you got product that will move more of that product. That's where your market lies. I will be sad when I'm no longer in front of classes. I will certainly feel like I've lost something. And Zoom won't change it. Zoom won't replace it. It will sustain. It'll extend my career. Like when I've lost the power to walk, but I can still take a powered chair to my Zoom camera, I can still teach a class. Eventually I'll lose the mental capacity for teaching, like we all do. And my mom did. She passed away this year. Her last words were, as she just checked out, as she just kind of wound down, she said, "This is a very boring way to die." And she was not wrong. And it was a joke, and she's a joke maker, and that's how she experienced her death.
Oh, wow.
Ultimately, when we think about aging, we're thinking about dying. And even if we deny that we're thinking about dying, that's what we're thinking about. And I've talked a lot today about awareness and acceptance and how they relate to creative practice. But I want to tell you, I work on awareness and I work on acceptance, not for creative practice, but for death. Because every time I choose to take a setback and interpret it as a chance to work on my acceptance, I'm practicing for the one thing I have to accept more than anything, and that is my own passing. I want to pass from life to death in acceptance. That is my goal. And my strategy for achieving that goal is to be in acceptance as much as possible. Stuck in traffic? Accept it. Fight with your spouse? Accept it. Can't run as hard as I used to? Pulled a hamstring? Had surgery? Accept it. Feeling pain? Feeling old? Feeling tired? Bad hearing? Bad memory? Accept it. Work on your acceptance so that when it comes time to accept the one thing that you'll have the worst time accepting, you'll have strategies and practice. And you can go through that death experience feeling, if nothing else, like you're making it be the experience you want it to be. That's my goal. I don't know if I'll get that. I could get run over by a truck. In my humor, in my joking sense, I say, I want to die in such a way that when people hear about it, they'll say, that was weird. That was a weird way to die. That would satisfy me. Like I'm walking down the street and I get hit by a softball and I just have a hematoma, fall down dead. Well, that was weird. How'd that happen? I'd be fine with that. But again, boy, I wish that the communication was not so imperfect. I wish that I could take my raw thought and transport them into your brain as raw thought. I wish that I could literally make you think the way I think, because I think my way of apprehending life and death is pretty healthy. And it has brought me and is bringing me and will continue to bring me a great deal of inner peace. And everybody wants inner peace. I just wish I could reach out to people and say, it is as simple as awareness and acceptance. If you have a practice of acceptance, if you see yourself doing what you're doing and you're okay with it, no matter how bad it is, if your default value is, it's okay, then when you face the worst thing, you have a way of thinking about it as being okay. I think that's what people want more than anything.
What movie about an artist's life is your favorite movie? I told you about this biopic I just watched.
The first one that comes to my mind is not my favorite, but it's Confederacy of Dunces. It's about the writer, what's his name? David Foster Wallace, and the interviewer who traveled with him.
Oh, that's actually an end of the tour, I believe.
It's called End of the Tour, but he wrote a Confederacy.
Oh, I see.
Confederacy
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
And sorry, I cut you off. You said that Confederacy of Dunces is your favorite film?
No, it's not my favorite film. You asked me what my favorite film about an artist's life. It was the first one that came to my mind, and now I'm going to try to give you a more favorite type answer to that question. The documentary about Amy Winehouse is one that I've watched more than once and gotten a lot of value out of, because that's someone who struggled to have her otherness be admired. Rocket Man. This is a really weird choice, but this is the one I'm going to stand by. We know it's Elton John's story, right? And we all think we know Elton John's story. But here's the part that I responded to. In his youth, Elton John was a big, big freak. The things that made him happy, flamboyant behavior, artistic expression, were disrespected and hated and loathed by his own father. And so he must necessarily hate and loathe those things in himself to some degree. You can't not. But still driven to art. Like, I know I'm not going to be fulfilled if I don't create art. But I also know that when I give into my artistic side, I'm giving into the part of myself that I hate and loathe. What is the solution? Go so far into the art that I succeed as an artist, that I become Elton John, who is not just weird and different and flamboyant, but successful, to the point where he can say to himself, I went through the worst part of myself and captured it and turned it into the best part of myself. And I think this is, as I think about it, this is the dark path to art. I don't have it because I'm not a dark person. I don't have to go through the darkness to find light. But if I were the son of someone who said you'll never amount to anything, you'll always be a loser as long as you try to do this acting thing or this comedy thing or whatever thing your parents don't want you to do, I would have to pass through acquired self-loathing in order to arrive at a place where the thing that made me hate myself the most is actually the thing that saves my life. They say there's a fine line between genius and insanity. That line can be defined by productivity. If you're crazy and you get nothing done, you're just crazy. If you're crazy and you create a body of work, you're Salvador Dali or Elton John or any other artist you can think of.
What makes a good story?
That's a great question. From time immemorial, we've been trying to figure this out. For me, the heart of a good story is its instruction. That is, in order to be a good story, it has to have a message. It has to tell me as the reader or the viewer what I'm expected to do based on this information. To take an example, that would be a bad example. Liar, Liar, Jim Carrey movie Liar, Liar. Jim Carrey thinks it's okay to lie and finds out you have to tell the truth. Person watching that movie says, oh, maybe I should tell the truth too. That's an instruction. The theme of the story, tell the truth, is the instruction that the viewer or the reader receives. For my money, it ain't a good story if it's not driven by an instruction, because otherwise it has no purpose. It's just there to be entertaining. You could even look at something like Hangover, which looks like it's just entertainment, but there's an instruction. The instruction is stand by your friends. No matter how bad things get, stand by your friends. So the story is informed with purpose. What does it mean to be a good story? That's the first thing. Story has to be informed with purpose. You have to be telling the story for a reason. It needs to have, this sounds self-evident, a beginning, a middle, and end, but it's self-evident, but still needs to be done. To me, a satisfying beginning and middle and end is an arc of change from denial to acceptance of the theme. So for me, a good story will be one about someone who starts out opposite to where he ends up or she ends up and takes a journey that's meaningful to get there. To be a good story, it needs to have stakes that matter. There is an expression of mine. The truth is revealed under pressure. If there is no pressure in the story, there will be no impetus to arrive at truth. The character will not change. The character won't be forced to change. For this, we can look at Star Wars. Luke wants to be a Jedi Knight, wants to be out there in the universe fighting bad guys, whatever. If the if the Imperial soldiers never come to his little planet, put him under pressure, he's never going to change. He's going to live his whole life there and we're never going to hear about him. But because he had to run for his life, he's put under pressure, he could start to transform. And transformation is the heart of the story. The story goes from beginning to middle to end across an arc of transformation from denial to acceptance of the theme being the instruction that the author wants the reader or the viewer to acquire. So that's what makes a good story.
The main character goes through a change of state from denial to acceptance of the theme.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Can we explain more of that?
Sure.
Maybe use an
Let's
example.
look at the famous movie Tootsie.
Right.
Dustin Hoffman, at the end of that movie, Dustin Hoffman says, "I was a better man to you as a woman than I ever was to any woman as a man." When we meet him, the beginning of that movie, he is selfish, misogynistic. He's a man, and he's a selfish actor, self-centered, angry, unhappy, unloved. He believes it's okay to be only out for himself and to exploit other people. That's where we find him at the beginning of things, because he's an actor, and actors are allowed to get away with things. The pressure that's put on him in the story says there's another way of being. And the other way of being is not as an actor, but as a person. So we can say that the theme of Tootsie is be yourself. And we can certainly see why that would be the theme, since he spends so much of the movie not being himself. When the movie starts out, he's an actor, the very definition of not the true self. When the movie ends up, he's just a guy asking for a girl's love and affection and acceptance. So he is transformed from an actor with no sense of self to a real person with a profound sense of self. Why? Because the events of the story put him under pressure and made him change, brought him to a point where he just couldn't sustain things anymore. He literally had to take off his wig and say, "I am not a woman, I am a man." That is a classic storytelling moment of truth, where the hero reveals the true self, takes off the mask, and throws himself or herself on the mercy of higher powers. I was wrong. All the way along I was wrong, and I don't expect to be happy from this point forward, but I know happiness doesn't matter, only not being wrong anymore. That's the only thing that matters. I have to change, and in this moment, I declare myself ready, willing, and able to change. That's what a moment of truth looks like. It's not acceptance of the truth. It's not awareness of the truth. It's acting upon the truth to create a new way of being. And any single movie you can think of that is a happy ending movie will have this arc of change from denial to acceptance. That's what makes it a happy ending movie. Because the hero learns the lesson of the theme and is rewarded with community, with a happy ending. If the hero fails to learn the lesson of the theme, then the hero is punished with exile or death, and then you get a tragedy called King Lear. It's worth noting that tragedies can be good stories too. They're just not the sort of stories that I value. I like stories where people learn lessons, are transformed, and get to live happily ever after. Other people have different ideas. And the question of what is a good story is completely subjective. I work a lot in Europe, where the idea of film story is completely different. They're not interested in people learning lessons. They're interested in posing philosophical questions. And their audience and their filmmakers are aligned with one another. But I grew up in happy ending romantic comedy America, and I have my way of looking at story. However, if you think it can be a good story without a structure, you're probably wrong. A solid structure is a necessary component of a good story, that beginning, middle, and end that we were talking about. There are many, many different ways to structure a story correctly. There are a lot of different structures that work. But to think that there is fulfillment in writing an unstructured story, it's probably a little bit of fear. The fear that you can't come up with a story that is well structured, and therefore you're going to argue that you don't need a structure. You can do it European style and just make an art film, and maybe you can. But just writing the story to see where it goes, you can get a good story, but you can't get a great story. And even as I say that, I know it's not true, because James Joyce. You know, James Joyce didn't structure Finnegan's Wake and then write Finnegan's Wake. He just wrote Finnegan's Wake. And it's art. I haven't read it. It's too complex for me, but many people like it and sing its praises. So, I don't know. I have all these ideas about story, and I teach all these ideas about story, but I'm also aware that nobody really knows. Story works because the story works. But that doesn't help me if I'm a young writer and I'm trying to make a sitcom work, for example. What is a good episode of a sitcom? Does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Yes. Does it have a theme? Usually. Is there a structure? I can see it. What else does it have? Dialogue, jokes, scene description? Not much. Not much there to it. But what makes it good is not the dialogue and the jokes, but the skeleton, the thing itself. So there's always a need for structure.
What is an authentic story of transformation?
What is an authentic story of transformation? An authentic story of transformation is one where the character starts out thinking his life or her life is kind of okay, going to be okay. As things now stand, there's no reason for change. My life is okay, it's not great, it's okay. Wedding singer, as an example. Adam Sandler is a wedding singer. He's not living his dream of being a Billy Idol level singer-songwriter, but he's okay. And he would stay okay if only he didn't meet Julie Gillooly and fall in love. Usually love is the thing that upsets the apple cart. Because when love enters a story and transformation is required, the goal is to get that love. And the character will try to get that love without undergoing transformation. And that effort will fail. And the character will try again and fail again and try again and fail again, and ultimately be brought to the point where the character realizes the only way I can get what I want is to be authentically transformed. And it might not even be a conscious decision. It might just be a consequence of the actions. I'm thinking about Groundhog Day. Love Groundhog Day because the instruction of that movie is so easy to understand. You cannot attract a woman of quality until you become a man of quality. And that's or you cannot attract a man of quality until you become a woman of quality. In that movie, Bill Murray wants to win Andie MacDowell. And he tries every strategy he can think of using the magical power of living the same day over and over again. Ultimately, he realizes, as things now stand, I'm never going to win her. I can't win her on this path. The only way I can win her is to surrender to her. The only way I can get her is to become different, even if it means I lose her. This is what the authentic your question was, what is authentic transformation? Authentic transformation takes place when the character says, with no hope of happiness, with every expectation that I will never be happy again, I'm not going to get anything I want. I'm not going to get what I wanted in the first place. I'm not going to get what I want from my love interest. I'm not going to get what I want out of my career. I'm getting none of it. Still, I have to sacrifice everything and be transformed because what I have now is no longer possible. I must be changed. I cannot stay the same, even if it costs me everything. Again, thinking about Tootsie, we can see what it cost him. Sorry, I had another example in my mind, but it went away, that old brain. Authentic transformation is, even if I lose everything, I still am transformed. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So Bill Murray is transformed in that movie, not by making the choice to be transformed, just by living the same day over and over again so many times that he ultimately grows up. He becomes sufficiently self-aware to win the heart of a person who is also self-aware, who won't take Bill Murray version 1.0. She'll only be satisfied with Bill Murray 2.0. So eventually he becomes Bill Murray 2.0, leaves the swamp, gets on the path, and lives happily ever after, we presume. We haven't seen Groundhog Day 2, so we don't know.
What is the truth that the main character believes at the beginning of the story?
What is the truth that the main character believes at the beginning of the story? I would say it is, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'll have everything I want. And that truth is revealed to be false. There must be some change in order for you to get what you really want. How do we know? Because if it were true, if he keeps doing what he's doing, he'll get what he wants. The story's over. He keeps doing what he's doing and he gets what he wants. He wins. If I keep playing the lottery, eventually I'm going to win and be rich. Okay, I won the lottery. No, I kept playing the lottery. I know that's a bad example. Let me try. Let me try a different one. Pretty Woman. Richard Gere, the heartless industrialist, says, if I keep buying and stripping companies, firing employees and reaping assets, I will be happy. My life is good, my life is right, I'm living according to principles I believe in. If I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to continue to be happy. That is the truth he believes in at the start of the story. Then he meets Julia Roberts, hooker with a heart of gold, like they exist. And she is pursuing her own truth, which is, I'm not even a hooker. I'm just someone who is doing a job while I'm waiting for my life to start. And if I keep doing this job, I'm paying no price, everything's cool, I'm fine. All I got to do is keep saving money for college and all will be well. They meet each other. They are each other's mutual change agents. Basically, he says to her, I love you, but I can't accept you as you're currently constructed. And she says, basically to him, I love you, but I can't accept you as you're currently constructed. And so in order for us to be together, we're both going to have to change. We're both going to have to let go of the truths that we started with and arrive at a new truth. How do we know they do it? Because it's there in the final scene of the movie where he climbs up the fire escape to her and says something about, so when the prince climbs up to the princess's tower and saves him, what happens next? And Julia Roberts says, well, she saves him right back. And that is, and they live happily ever after. They are transformed, they're in acceptance, they're reborn, they can live happily ever after, which they couldn't do at the start of the movie.
How does the truth tie into the theme?
The truth is the instruction of the theme. To take the example of Richard Gere, the false truth that he starts out with is, I can exploit people and be happy. The truth that he arrives at is, I can't exploit people and be happy. I have to stop exploiting people. I've got to be a better person. The theme is, be a better person. No matter what it takes, do everything in your power to transform yourself from what you were to what you will become. So when we speak of the character going on a journey from denial to acceptance of the theme, we're saying that the character starts out saying, the theme is not true. I don't agree with the theme. I don't buy the theme. I don't need the theme. I'm the opposite of that. At the end of the movie, I was wrong. I need the theme. I am the theme. I want to follow the instruction of that theme. I want to tell the truth. I want to find love. I want to be my own person. I want to write love songs. All of those understood truths, then those become the themes that the audience understands. Take Wedding Singer as an example. If you want to be a singer-songwriter, be a singer-songwriter. That's the theme of the movie. That's the instruction. Be the person you want to be. When we meet that person, he's not the person he wants to be. When we depart from that person's company, he is the person that he wants to be. The person watching the movie says, hey, if I do what he did, then I can be the person I want to be too. That's the communion of story. That's why story is told. You in the audience, I'm going to show you a guy being transformed. And you're going to say, that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. But in the back of mind, you're going to be thinking, whether you're aware of it or not, if I did that, I would be transformed too. And if transformation is appealing enough to me, I'm going to do it. Maybe I'll do it in a small way. Maybe I'll stop cutting off other drivers when I'm driving. Maybe I'll stop being so impatient in a supermarket checkout line. Maybe I'll spend Saturday mornings writing poems. Okay, it's not a lifetime as a writer, but it's Saturday mornings writing poems, and it's a start. So that's how the viewer is inspired by the story from the storyteller who was inspired by life experience. It's often been noted that there's a difference between writers and everybody else, and the difference is everybody else is content to listen to writers. Everybody else is content to have the truth presented to them. Writers aren't content. They have to figure the truth out for themselves. This is what drives us crazy. If we could accept other people's truths, then we would be in the audience accepting other people's truths. We might be in a congregation of a church. I have no quarrel with religion, but a lot of people who practice religion do it because they don't have to think for themselves, and they're content not to think for themselves. They are given a set of explanations and answers, and they say, that's fine by me. This works for me, drives a lot of value to my life, I'm fine. But writers, and by extension, all questing spirits, are not satisfied with that. We have to figure this stuff out for ourselves. And if we're thwarted in our journey, it frustrates us. But if we are abundant and willing to devote energy to our journey, it gives us exactly the life we want to have.
How does a writer figure out what the theme of the story is?
How does a writer figure out what the theme of their story is? Remember the question I asked earlier? It might not end up in the tape, but what's the most important thing you know?
Yes.
That's where you start looking for theme. You start asking yourself, what are my controlling ideas? What are the big things that matter to me? For myself, take risk. I describe it in more florid terms, surf strange waves. If you see a strange wave, it's going to take you someplace new. Get on that wave. Don't worry about the consequences. Just go. So this is an instruction to the self. I've lived my life according to it. It's a very important theme to me. I like to share that information with other people. You can set yourself free. You can do things that you didn't imagine you could do. So that's a theme that is important to me. The themes that are important in story are the themes that are important in life. If it matters to you in the way you live your life, it will matter to you in your storytelling. And it may very well be that if it doesn't matter to you, it's not going to work as a story because you won't care about it enough on a thematic level. Let's take an example. We were talking about romantic, Harlequin romance type stuff. Maybe the theme of such fiction is a given. It's part of the contract between writer and reader. The theme is always only take love on your own terms. Don't settle for society's version of love. Find your own version of love. That's a pretty well-trod theme, and it comes up over and over again in romances of a certain sort. If I'm writing that material and I have no invested relationship with love, I'm not going to tell that story well. The theme won't matter to me. The theme won't resonate with me. So I always start with themes that are important to me, because exploring those themes will give me enough energy to sustain me while I'm writing page after page after page after page. I wrote a novel once where the theme was accept. In one word, accept. A novel called Lucy in the Sky, available at Bafflegab Books. Story of a teenage boy growing up as a non-hippie in the Midwest in the 1960s. Wants to be a hippie. Doesn't know what hippies really are. Just knows that there are no hippies where he lives as far as the eye can see. Meets a girl. Falls in love with her. She's a hippie. She's going to teach him everything she knows. Too bad she's his cousin. good news, things are not always what they seem. She might in fact not be his cousin. That's part of the story. But what he really learns in the course of this journey is, I will be asked to accept things. I will be asked to accept the presence of this person in my life. I will be asked to accept the demands this person places on me. I will be asked to accept how this person challenges my thoughts. And every time I choose acceptance, I'm rewarded. The first time I accept a willingness, new information, she gives me more of her time. So that's a win for me. When she breaks down and reveals her true self to me and is vulnerable with me, and I accept that, when I accept the worst version of her, then we make love. Not my cousin, by the way. I've already squared that part away. Okay. So acceptance gets you to make love. That's pretty good. At the time I wrote the novel, acceptance was an issue in my life, and I explored it in the novel and came to a deeper understanding of how acceptance works in my life as I was writing the story of someone who was trying to figure out how acceptance works in his life.
Why does he want to be a hippie?
He had a sense that there was a way of looking at the world that was different from the way he'd been told to look at the world. He had a sense that the old programming of 1950s America wasn't harmonizing with the new reality of 1960s America, and understood that all the things he thought he wanted to be could be found in being a hippie. The real thing he learns is that being a hippie is not about love beats and peace signs. Being a hippie is about the choices you make and the chances you take, what you believe in and how you stand behind what you believe in. That's my interpretation. There's like cartoon hippie, summer of love hippie, and then there's personal transformation hippie. A lot of people in my generation, mostly a little bit older than me, woke up one day and said, whatever society has in mind for me, I've been given to understand that there is a higher reality, and I'm not going to settle for this BS reality, not when I know there's a higher reality. Maybe I learned it by reading Jack Kerouac on the road, maybe the poems of Allen Ginsberg or the paintings of Kandinsky or Pollock. By the time our hero wants to be a hippie in 1969, there's a lot of evidence that there's a lot of transformation available to him that is untouched by him. So it's easy to think that, it's easy to conflate being a hippie with being transformed. They're not the same thing. But becoming a hippie is a legitimate pathway toward transformation. But so is becoming a priest, so is becoming a nun, so is becoming a social worker, so is becoming an artist. These are all legitimate paths to transformation. The path that's not a legitimate path to transformation is take a job in your father's store because that's what your father wants you to do, and run the store when your father dies, even if it's the last thing in the world you want to do. That's not acceptable. In 1950s America, it's acceptable because there's no counter-narrative. By 1960s America, and certainly by 2025 America, there's plenty of counter-narrative. There's plenty of people who've figured out just because they tell you you have to live your life a certain way, you don't have to live your life that way. So I would say he only thought he wanted to be a hippie. That's the truth he thought. But what he really wanted was transformation. And he got it.
It's interesting, people that grow up with some shelter versus those that don't, what they find appealing and what they need. Because for some, it might actually be nice to know there's a port in the storm, i.e. the father's store to work in.
Yes, exactly. Look, not everybody needs to be transformed, and not everybody wants to be transformed. Again, we're talking about writers and everybody else, or artists and everybody else. People listening to this podcast for sure want to be transformed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be tuning in. But not everybody's like that. I asked my dad once, what do you believe in? And his answer boiled down to, don't know, don't care. And I thought, well, all right, I hope that works for you when you're dying. Turns out he got Alzheimer's, and he died without knowing or caring. So ironically, his life philosophy did sustain him. And I see that expression on your face, oh, it's so sad, your father died of Alzheimer's. This is where I wish I could just have a laser beam from my mind to your mind, because there is no sadness in my mind in thinking about that. There's no sadness in my mind about thinking about my mother's death. There's no sadness in my mind, this is tricky, about my brother's own cognitive impairment. I love him, I lament what's happening to him, but I don't assign a negative value to things, and that's by choice. It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's just a thing that is. And if that's your point of view, it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's just a thing that is. You can operate so much more effectively in this life, and you can have so much more happiness because you're not burdened by that negative assessment that we put on virtually everything in our lives.